Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dolls of all ages, are you ready to watch two Ken dolls fight in a vat of pudding? No? Too bad! But before we watch these little twinks get their twunk on, we have to go over a few rules of the arena. The first one is that the Dub Talk Podcast arena may contain language and content that may not be suitable for younger audiences, and that listeners' discretion is advised. Please be aware that there's a splash zone in order, and that spoilers may be flung for the entirety of Angelic Layer and any and all other anime. So if you don't want to get those spoilers on your jorts, then you should be careful and come back to this later. And finally, as that Ken doll comes from the top rope and hits the G.I. Joes and his grenades, remember that the views and opinions expressed are that of the individual fighters and do not reflect the Dub Talk participants as a whole. Now this battle's going into round 6 and the G.I. Joes have been neutered. But what's that? We have a new entrant. Are those Bratz dolls? I didn't even know they were allowed in here. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Dub Talk Arena. Tonight, we have an episode for you. Do you like the nerve gear from Sword Art Online?
Never watched it, don't know.
Did you like the movie Real Steel starring Hugh Jackman?
You bet I did.
I have not seen it because I'm a plebeian.
Have you ever wanted to watch two Barbie dolls beat the living shit out of each other?
Oh my god, do I?
Without your brother sticking bottle rockets to it.
You mean you can do that without strapping a bottle rocket to your Barbie?
Okay, see, I heard bottle rocket and my mind immediately went somewhere else.
No, Jet, that's the other Clamp show with robots. Well, boy, howdy, do I have a show for you. Tonight, I have with me, your host, Megan, Deuce Roots.
Yeah! Roots Mania, brother! What are you gonna do when these 10-inch pythons come after you?
Deuce Jet.
I was gonna make a Barbie joke, but I can't think of one.
And Deuce Amon.
See, the joke here is that I'm doing an impression of noted wrestler Orange Cassidy, who does not say anything and always wrestles with his hands in his pockets. So, make of that what you will.
And tonight, we're here to bring you the one, the only, the least creepy Clamp show. Tonight, we're talking...
I was about to say Tsubasa Chronicles isn't that bad if you ignore how bonkers the second half of that manga is.
You don't ignore how bonkers the second half of Tsubasa Chronicles is. That's what makes it fun. Tonight, we are here to talk about Angelic Layer, a series that actually might have more historical significance to the anime community than you'd like to imagine. Because, hey guys, did you know that this was the second television project Bones ever worked on?
Wow.
You don't say!
That's right. This came before Fullmetal Alchemist, came before Wolf's Rain, and yet still has some really nice animation, actually. I was kind of surprised how well this held up. But we're not here to talk about the animation. Well, we will talk about the show, but we're mostly here to talk about the dub. Now, this episode is a special episode brought to us by our Patreon quarterly raffle winner. So thank you to J2 A.K.A. Jared for picking this one out for us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and if, we'll get back to more Patreon things at the end. By the way, did you also know that this show was written by the guy who ended up being the, original story writer for Code Geass?
Really?
Huh.
Yeah, Ichiro, Okuchi.
Wow, this is significantly less creepy than I would expect from him.
You're not wrong, Jet. You're not wrong.
Okay to be bad. I mean, he's better than his partner Yoshino, but that's a low bar.
Well, he saw he had to adapt a Clamp manga, and he thought, I can't even beat Clamp at their mildest. I'm not gonna try.
Which is really weird because this anime actually changes some stuff from the manga.
Does it make it less weird?
When we get to it, we'll get to it.
Oh,
but
boy.
also, I would like to point out that the guy who directed this also directed Azumanga Daioh and has been directing the Index series.
Interesting.
So somebody went to purgatory.
Just pour one out for that guy.
Pour one out for Hiroshi Nishikori.
At least the work is regular?
Yeah,
I
that's on
mean,
the Index franchise.
regular in quotation marks because Rokan has had more hiatuses than you could.
For very specific values of regular.
What is more cursed, the Index franchise or New Mutants?
People like Index, so I'm gonna go with New Mutants.
It's funny that it took one of us several seconds to think of the answer.
I have no horse in this race.
I had no answer to that question.
Exactly. But you know what we do have interest in? Barbies beating the shit out of each other.
It's true.
Yes.
From the minds of the people who created Cardcaptor Sakura, and a show later on connected to this, where the on button cannot be found by Ben Shapiro. I'm not letting that get edited out.
No, we're keeping that one.
That one gets to stay. Anyways.
WAP was an experience.
That's just... Anyway, back to the plot of the show. If you've never seen Angelic Layer, the plot is as follows. Misaki Suzahara is a 7th grader who just moved to Tokyo to live with her aunt Shoko. She's small in size, but that won't stop her. After arriving to the city outside of Tokyo Station, she ends up getting lost because seriously, have you ever seen the Tokyo Station? You've all played enough Persona 5 to know that you can easily get lost there. She watches a battle between two dolls on a live TV called Angelic Layer. Interested in learning about Angelic Layer, an eccentric man wearing a white lab coat and glasses, calling himself Ichan, encourages Misaki to purchase and create her own angel, and in the process gets store security called on him because, frankly, if you saw Ichan walking up to you, you'd want an adult as well.
I mean, it's funny you say that, but I will bring that up when we get to him in the episode proper.
Yes. She wants to create an angel that is short but strong and happy, and names her Hikaru based off Hikari Shindo from Clamp's Magic Knight Rayearth. Even though she's clueless about the game, Misaki soon competes in tournaments and assisted and watched carefully by Ichan. Basically, all I can say is, hey, have you ever wanted a fighting tournament anime where girls actually matter? Then do I have a series for you.
You're not wrong about that. You're not wrong about that at all.
Yeah, you're definitely not wrong about that. Watching this definitely reminded me of another fighting show, but I'll get to that later.
Seriously, this is a show where literally one of the characters I can only describe as the token male character. Anyway, tonight we are here to talk about the dub of Angelic Layer. We're going to be reviewing all 26 episodes of the dub and giving our thoughts as follows. Now, this is kind of a weird... I guess not weird situation, but the original rights holder for this dub basically no longer exists.
Is that Avex?
In quotation marks. Because this was dubbed way back in the year of, I believe, 2005.
Oh,
by
no.
ADV.
No.
Oh, there we go. I see where this is going.
Fun little story. This was actually a DVD that somebody brought into my high school anime club. So this, I would have watched it around 2004. I looked it up. The DVDs actually originated in 2003. So
yeah, because the show started in 2001, so this is a 19-year-old show with a 17-year-old dub.
Oh boy.
Not the oldest thing we've covered, because we've obviously covered Gunsmith Cat's another ADV show, but still nonetheless. So let's move directly into our first round of this bout, starting with our director and our scriptwriter. Our director is David Williams, and our writer is Tiffany Grant. David Williams you'll know as the director of the ADV dub of the Dirty Pair OVAs, Dean Angel, and Spectral Force. And Tiffany Grant you'll know for her writing on Comic Party Revolution, Den-O Coil, and Parasite the Maxim. Let's start this off with Jet, then Amon, then Roots and myself.
Okay, so I guess starting with the direction, I'm not really familiar with David Williams as I haven't watched a whole ton of old ADV dubs. Okay, I mean, that's not true. I have watched several old ADV dubs. A lot of them were done by our good buddy Steve, so you can definitely imagine what the quality was there. And so I wasn't too sure what to expect from this, but yeah, I guess it's kind of part of the course for like old ADV stuff. So it definitely does sound like a 17-year-old dub. It definitely does sound kind of hokey in a lot of places. It's like a lot of the actors sound like exaggerations of archetypes that have been refined a lot more since then. But at the same time, there is kind of like a weird charm to it. And while I can't say any of the performances here necessarily wowed me, there weren't too many that I was outright like, yeah, no on. So I'd say it worked out pretty well. And it was kind of nice hearing a couple of actors in particular, what I assume were like really early roles for them. So that was kind of neat. But yeah, on the whole, the direction it's not great, but for the time it was made, I think it sounds like pretty okay, I guess. Sorry, script I'm a little more iffy on. I mean, again, it's an old ADV dub, so I'm not like super surprised at this, but it is very literal. By very literal, down to how they use. I mean, it's like down to how they use like acronyms or. Oh wait, no, not acronyms. God, why am I blanking on this?
Honorifics?
Yeah, honorifics. There we go. Yeah, definitely a lot of like characters being referred to Miss or Miss, and then like Misaki, she is a thing you hear a lot. So yeah, that was a little weird in a lot of places. I mean, I got used to it after a while, but like super little translations are always kind of for me. But on the whole, I think this dub is like fine for the time it was made. It's definitely should have changed, but I had a pretty decent time listening to it.
Awesome, thank you so much.
I enjoyed this. I had a lot of fun. It is very obviously an ADV dub from the early 2000s. It is a little odd. It feels kind of loose, especially compared to anything that you would have heard coming out of anywhere in Texas in the last like 5 years or so. It has the honorifics thing, which is very reflective of ADV. I think being kind of the very they tended to wear their fanishness on their sleeve a lot more as a dubbing company. Maybe not so much now, but especially back then. But I had a lot of fun with it. This felt very. It was nicely punchy. It was very exuberant and cartoony. This feels like the kind of thing where, had a bigger company put out this same dub, I feel like they would have tried to get it on TV at some point. Because this feels like something that you probably could have slotted on whatever else was on the WB at the time, and it probably would have gotten an audience, aside from the fact that it's clearly way too short for any TV station to want to bother with. The only complaint I have is one of those weird just functions of like translation where there are noticeably lines where in Japanese there was obviously a pause like halfway, 2/3 of the way through the line that in Japanese was a perfectly fine place to stop talking, and not so much in English. And usually attached to a line where I'd read it and I'm like, yeah, I'm not seeing a good way to restructure this where there isn't an awkward pause in the middle. The animation has done them dirty. What can you do? But beyond that, it was like it was very fun. Like if you're a younger person, you were not watching anime in the 2000s, and you kind of want an idea of like what dubs sounded like then. I actually think this is probably just a nice example of like, here's what you get. It's got some of the good, it's got some of the bad and awkward, and it's generally a fun time to listen to on the whole.
Okay. So I guess tonight's gonna be a really interesting episode. Obviously this is a dub that was produced, I would say at the earliest 2002, like right at the tail end, because I think Disc 1 came out like spring of 2003. So yeah, we're talking about a nearly 20-year-old dub here. It is definitely, shall we say, a product of its time. It definitely wears its age on its sleeve. I do like it, but it is specifically for those sort of hokey charms. Because this is a kind of dub that I grew up with. This is the stuff that I would watch with friends after school in my high school's history department, with like this little high school wheeled TV with like immediately next door to the place where they had detention. Shout out to the Mount Ararat High School Anime Club. In terms of direction and scriptwriting, though, I would say casting is probably about as good as you could probably get at the time. And the dialogue definitely... I don't know if I would call it loose, as Amon did. I would almost say it's too rigid. The translations are hyper literal, and not just in the honorific sense that Jet was bringing up. The characters say everything. Every little minute detail gets brought up. And, you know, Amon also mentioned that this felt like the kind of thing that would air on kids' TV if given the opportunity. Given how much everything is literally explained in dialogue, I would actually buy that. I would not be surprised if ADV at some point actually tried to shop this out to, like, Kids WB or Fox Kids. And also, yeah, the also sort of, I call it the Bleach Stutter, where, as someone was bringing up, it's sort of the actor says their line, and then there's a brief pause in the middle, and then they continue. That's actually a thing that kind of drives me nuts in dubs, because obviously the English language doesn't flow like that, and it's just the kind of thing that I don't want to call it bad script writing. I guess Amon had a good point when he said the animation did the show dirty in terms of the dub. So, needless to say, I'm a bit on the fence about the direction and script writing.
So, yeah, I'll say out of everybody in the group, like, I have the most sentimental attachment to this show. This is probably one of the earliest box sets I ever got, and of all things, I got it at Kinokuniya, back the first time I ever found that store. Like, back in probably like 10, 15 years ago. But I do agree that the dub it's not as good as other dubs of the time period. And I can say that because I watched a lot of dubs that came out in the early 2000s recently. This doesn't hold up anywhere near as well as, say, Cowboy Bebop, Wolf's Rain, or Last Exile. This is clearly a tier below those shows.
Yeah, I mean, and if you're looking at other Texas-based things, I'm pretty sure like Yu Yu Hakusho was around 2003, and that dub still holds up really well.
Yeah, I actually think that this dub does kind of hold up in the sense that it is a little hokey and cheesy. And surprisingly, when I was actually looking at the cast list for this, I was actually surprised that a lot of people in the show showed up in stuff that is still in a lot of otaku's radars these days. Like, I was surprised at how many of them were in at least one Sentai show that has come out within the last 5 to 6 years. So, it's not to say that I don't think any of the actors in this are particularly bad. Are there rough performances that I think are very, like, literal dialogue-y, kind of gaspy, a little flat at points? Maybe, like, clearly if this dub came out, like, today, there would be a completely different cast except for one person, because I don't think they'd ever actually recast her, because she was kind of great in this even back then. Maybe, this isn't a show, like, if somebody else picked it up and, like, gave it a redub, like they did, say, Evangelion or, Escaflowne, I would actually be a little bit more sad, because I actually think that part of the dub's weird hokey charms is what really got me attached to this show. It is really approachable for people who don't give a shit or little kids. Like, this show is actually surprisingly child-friendly for how oddly intricate and kind of violent the fights get. Like, let's be real, at one point, one Angelic Layer doll picks up another one and breaks its back over its shoulders, and then lets it roll off a mountain. That's a phrase of things that happens in this show. Do I think it holds up as well as other Clamp dubs? That's hard to say because it's, in a weird sense, Clamp shows haven't had the best dub track record in the world.
There's the ones Funimation dub, and then there's everything else.
Like, Tsubasa has a pretty good dub. Most people tend to like the Chobits dub. Card Captors has had 4 dubs, and none of them are very good.
And then there's X. Yo.
Okay, wait, no. Triple X Holic had a pretty good dub.
I think any Clamp anime that's based on one of their series that hasn't actually concluded is probably cursed to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, I guess by, like, weird... I mean, like, if you want to count it by weird technicality, the best Clamp dub is probably Code Geass, but...
That doesn't count.
That doesn't count. They didn't create that. They just did the character designs. Which probably explains why Suzaku and Lelouch are about as straight as cooked spaghetti.
Yeah, this is why I said weird technicality.
I know. I know. Like, I actually think that this holds up fairly well for a Clamp dub. It certainly holds up way better than Cardcaptor Sakura's original dubs ever did.
Sadly, that's not a very high bar.
Frankly, yeah, fuck you, Nelvana. Please go fuck yourself, Nelvana. But no, like, I will say that there is... Look, we're not talking about this character, but I think bar none the worst performance goes to Hilary Haig's little brother.
Oh.
The girl who gets really mad at her after she loses to Suzuka.
Oh.
I think I remember this now, and I think it wasn't very good. No.
It was really weird. Which is so weird because Hilary Haig is actually really good in this show for, like, as a one-off character. But her brother had, like, the worst voice in the whole show. I just, like, it's really weird is that, like, the first, like, 9-10-ish episodes are fairly normal kid show standard, and then they start slowly, like, dripping in Clamp weirdness. And then by, like, episode 20, they just were like, a pinch of salt. You said a cup? Okay! And they just dump all their weird spices into the bowl. And you're like, this shouldn't
want weird romantic hang-ups? It's like, oh no, it's like that scene from A Bug's Life with the seeds in the little bottle when a Hopper just rips the bottom out of it and it dumps all over the one guy.
And you're like, this shouldn't taste good, but it does. Or at least it did to me. So, are we all ready to move on to our first group of characters?
Sure.
Yeah.
Alright. So if you're gonna run a weird hyper-techno game, and, like, by weird hyper-techno game, I mean, like, let's be real, if Angelic Layer was real, I would totally fucking play it.
Oh, I mean, I think we all would.
But you gotta have some sciencey people working on it and making sure the tournament runs well. So let's talk about... I swear to God, they're called Team Angelic Layer, but if you look anywhere else, they're also called the name of the store, which has the most adorable name ever of Piffle Princess. So let's talk about Team Piffle Princess. There is Hiromi Fujimori. She is a female scientist that works in the back lab and kind of is one of the 2 people who make somebody's life a living hell. There is Yuko Inada. She is essentially Misaki's mom's caretaker, second. She also is an engineer that has been helping out on the Angelic Layer project. There is Shinji Inada, Yoka's husband, another engineer who is helping to take care of the project. And then there is God's eternal butt monkey, Masahiro Ogata. He is Ichan's assistant, an engineer, and his life is nothing but suffering and being whipped.
That poor bastard.
It is also implied that Hiromi really likes him, and she also delivers one thing where she's like, I don't want a guy who's romantic, I want a guy who's a putz so I can pick on him.
Well, if that's what you're looking for in a man, then we have a man for you.
Ogata's entire existence can be summed up as put on the chimp suit and dance. He does kind of have his day for a moment, and then that immediately even goes to shit. So, playing Team Piffle Princess, playing Ogata is Mark X. Lazowski, playing Hiromi is Allison Summerall, playing Yuko is Kathia Corker, and playing Shuji is Jay Hickman. Mark Lazowski, you'll know as characters such as Jun Ao in Martin's successor Nadisco, Soichi Yagamo and Razafon in Uxkul in Flip Flappers. Alison Sumerall, you'll know as Yuri in the Dirty Pair Affair on Nolandia, Kagura in Azumanga Daioh, and my actual Food Wars waifu, Hinako Inu in Food Wars. Catherine Corker, you'll know as Arisa in... I swear to God, this is my favorite name to say on any podcast for a show.
Mm-hmm.
All-purpose cultural cat girl Nuku Nuku.
Oh no.
Takako / Fenrir in Pre-Tier and Tomoyo Sakigami in the Clannad series. Jay Hickman, you'll know as characters such as Mito in Princess Tutu, The Fool in Kaleido Star, and Joichiro Yukihara in Food Wars, aka the world's hottest dad. Daddy has a good reason for leaving you.
Describe good.
Exactly. The answer is it isn't good. It's just he pats Soma on the head and goes, "Have fun at culinary school. Daddy's got a good reason for abandoning you. Have fun, kids. Have fun. Don't get thrown out."
Well, I guess it's better than what he did to Soma's evil brother, in quotation marks. God, I hate season 5
That
so
wasn't...
much.
Nobody fucking likes the blue arc. Also, that isn't even his fucking brother. I don't care about spoiling the end of Food Wars on this podcast. Guys, you really don't want to watch the end of Food Wars. There's watching something nosedive, and then there's watching something getting tactically nuked from orbit.
Alright, so before we go too much further with this, as I was watching this show, I was thinking to myself, I feel like in an alternate timeline, I could have seen maybe 4 kids trying their hands at this. So as a weird experiment, I thought to myself, what would the 4 kids names of some of these characters be? Now,
God, Jet, you beautiful bastard.
Okay. Now I don't actually have any of these written down, and some of these I'm just doing off the top of my head. So let's see what I can do here. So for Ogata, okay, that's way too many syllables for kids to memorize. Now Otto, that's the name kids will know. Okay, let's see, Hiromi. Also too many syllables. Let's go with Hillary. That's a little easier for kids.
Damn it, Hillary. What about her emails?
Oh no.
Okay, now Yuko, I can't think of any good American names that start with a Y, so I'm just gonna go with Coco.
Sure, why not?
And
For
Shinji,
kids, sure, why not?
okay, and Shinji, let's go with Sean. Sean sounds good.
Okay. Sean sounds fine.
Get in the robot, Sean.
Fine.
Shit, this is the Devilman Crybaby group, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Man, we've come a long way, guys. Nobody comes on the ceiling in this show.
I would hope not.
Anyway, Jet, your thoughts?
It's like, sure, I could be pretty quick. I could be pretty quick on both of these. I didn't have too many thoughts on Shuji and Yuko. They were mostly just kind of there for a lot of the time. But I thought that Jay Hickman and Keifa Corker sounded okay. And again, this was super early ADV, so it didn't sound kind of exaggerated at times, especially Jay Hickman. I actually didn't know that was him until I was looking at this cast list, so I guess that's a little surprising. But yeah, I thought they were pretty okay otherwise. Also, Subaru and Hiromi stood out a little more. I kind of liked her back and forth with Ogata. I wouldn't necessarily say they had great chemistry, but I liked how much he kind of busted his chops alongside each other, so I got a couple of good laughs out of that. I generally enjoy Alison Subaru things. She isn't always great, but when she's good, she's usually pretty strong. And well, again, like a lot of the actors in this show, she sounded really kind of overly exaggerated at points. I thought she sounded pretty okay for the most part. But of course, the standout of this section is definitely Mark Lisowski as Ogata, because being Ogata is suffering. Again, this dub sounds very hokey at points, and Mark's Ogata sounds especially hokey, but in this case it's definitely worse because this guy is just a perpetual butt monkey getting dunked on at virtually every opportunity, and just subjected to all manners of weird stuff by his bosses. So the fact that he has this incredibly hooky voice coming out of him is actually really appropriate. So I definitely got a lot of laughs out of that, especially all like the weird, on all the weird torture he went through. I mean, I just really wanted to see this poor guy get a break, catch a break at some point. He never does. I mean, I guess he did get a girlfriend at the end, so I guess that worked out. So, hey, he got something.
He got the greatest Christmas gift of all, pussy.
But yeah, I thought Mark was a lot of fun here, and I thought all the performances here more or less did what they needed to for like the crew. Again, they did sound kind of hokey at points because again, early ADV dub, but I didn't have like any seriousness in how any of them sounded.
Nice, thanks. Amon?
Yeah, this was a fun little set. Let me see. Jay probably stood out relatively the least. I think part of that's just that Shuji doesn't have too much to do aside from just being support, but I like hearing Jay Hickman in things. He has a nice voice. He was good. Yuko Keita, is it? I liked her. I especially liked her bits with what the hell's her name? Shuko. Yeah, Shuko. I like all of her stuff with Shuko. I thought she good performance. For a kid show, the show can get dramatic and melodramatic in places. And I think the cast handles that very well, and I think Keita is a particular example of that. Like, I liked a lot of her interactions with that, especially the bit where it's like, is she the one where there's a conversation of go home to your husband, you don't have to worry about me, go be with your family?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought that was just like a nice little bit. Nice. It was a nice quiet little scene in this, kids action show, and I thought she handled it very well. Allison's a lot of fun as Hiromi because her and Ogata play off each other really well, and it's just so many shenanigans going on. It's so many shenanigans. Poor Ogata. Really, he should sue. This is so much workplace harassment.
That man would get so much workman's comp.
Just unfound. He would never need to work again. It would be unfound. Ichan would go to jail for other reasons than why he would otherwise go to jail. We'll get to that. But Mark plays him really, really well. I think he's very funny. He always has the right level of just sheer terrified desperation of a man who does not like what is happening but can do nothing about it. He's just a lot of fun here. Just panicky and over the top, and clearly afraid of his boss. Except for the one half an episode where he gets to have him over the barrel, and it doesn't last very long, but he makes the most of it. Yeah, it was a good set. Good supporting characters. I liked him.
Yeah. So, yeah. Honestly, I thought this of the supporting cast, the behind the scenes engineer crew was probably the strongest batch overall. Honestly, Jay Hickman and Keita Coker didn't get to do a lot. Honestly, I thought there was going to be something between Yuko and Shuko, given their interactions over the course of around the middle of the series. That didn't end up happening though. I think the big core of this group is going to be Hiromi and Ogata, who are just the absolute perfect comedic duo together. Okay, well, for one thing, Hiromi gets a really hilarious line during the fight on the pirate ship. Some weird lightning electromagnetic thing goes down, and the ship is starting to screw up. So she and Ogata have to go underneath the system and, play with wires until it works again. And Ogata's butt crashes into her butt. And she's just like, oh, that's sexual harassment. I just got this really, really guttural belly laugh out of it. Just because everything before this basically led me to believe that, oh yeah, if I heard that ADV had tried to pitch this to kids' TV and it just didn't end up happening, I wouldn't be surprised. And then a character brings up sexual harassment. And it was just absolutely hilarious to me. And what can I say about Ogata? He is just the absolute butt monkey of butt monkeys, and Mark Lazowski just absolutely nails it. So, overall, I really like this batch of characters.
Okay, so Shunji and Yuko, I'll do first. Shuji is pretty solid. He is a good side character where his voice never overtakes the main cast, and Jay does a solid job there. I actually really kind of like Katha as Yuko against Shuko's voice. I think she's a little bit more deep and mature, and they're both two characters who are clearly friends for over the years. And the other thing is that they're both moms, and Yuko is a good mom. And Shuko, we'll get to that. We'll get to that, Shuko. But I think Katha does a good job of making her sound different from Shuko, but also having strength of her own. She's a little bit more authoritative. Because not only is she a friend, she's basically like her caretaker that isn't Ichan. She's the one who goes to the hospital with her. She's the one that takes her home. She's the one that like goes around with her during the day and stays with her. So she does kind of have this more, like, deeper, level-headed tone. Allison as Hiromi is pretty good. I think I agree with Jet where she's clearly over-exaggerating more than I think she needs to. This is a performance that I do still enjoy. It does remind me a little bit of her Hinako performance, but I don't think it needs to be as over-the-top as she is in that performance. Because she is somebody who is still, obviously, an intelligent scientist who is working on this crazy project. And then, Ogata. Ogata is one of my favorite performances in the show, because Mark just rocks him. He is hysterical, his delivery is great, he's got this weird butt monkey putz voice to him that is clearly done for comedic effect. And it never, to me, goes over the line of being super grating, because, I think under an actor who didn't really know how to control it, this performance could easily go south and be one of the worst in the show. He does a really great job with it, and I can't really add more on this to be said, but I do love when, he finally gets to have his day in the car, because Ichan made them all meet early and then showed up late, and he's like, and I love the way it's done too, is because he's kind of moping about getting a penalty, and he goes, wait a minute, you're the one who proposed the time! You get the penalty! And, like, you can finally hear it in his voice, this man has finally gotten his day. That wrong clock is ringed right, and that blind squirrel has got its nut. I also love when, they're on the beach, and he's like, fireworks! And he's like, oh, you guys are losers with your Japanese sparklers, we're gonna blow shit up! And him and Yuko, like, clearly, like, set off an explosion, and they're like, yeah! And you're like, who are the children in this? Who? Which is actually kind of more of a theme of the show in more ways than you realize. So, are we all ready to move on to the next group?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So, let's get into the games of the fighting tournament, starting with the Kanto games. They are the first big set that Misaki has to overcome, on her way to winning the National Cup, and to, well, basically see her mom again. Her first opponents in the Kanto games are Ringo Seto, an idol who likes to play Angelic Layer in her off time. Her angel is Ronka, an angel who uses dance and basically channels wind via it. Her next opponents are basically a twofer, Madoka Fujisaki and Arisu Fujisaki. Madoka pilots the angel Mao, a small angel that accelerates based off of their kung fu experience, who is built by Arisu. Arisu builds Mao after Madoka loses to another deuce named Hitoko and her angel Suzuka. However, though Arisu builds angels she does not fight, that is until they try to cheat against Misaki and get caught.
Shame.
They try to cheat and they get caught by another character named Ojiro, and by the end Madoka learns the power of having fun again, and eventually vows that she wants to make her own angel, and Arisu eventually makes her own angel named Alice, who we don't get to see fight until the very end, with the plans on beating Misaki. Ringo Seto is played by Mariela Ortiz. Madoka Fujisaki is played by Shelley Colleen Black. And Arisu Fujisaki is played by Mandy Clark. Mariela Ortiz you'll know as characters such as Biyako and Miyoko Ken. Aria in Sister Princess, and Shinobu Nanotamata in A Certain Scientific Railgun S. Shelley Colleen Black, you'll know as characters such as Mikan Naoyamano in Air Gear, Kyoko in Gilgamesh, and Liza in Made in Abyss. Mandy Clark, you'll know as Pen Pen in the original ADV dub of Neon Genesis Evangelion. Tomo Taiko in Azumangadayo, and Mawata Awayuki in Pre-Tier.
Okay, real quick. So let's see, what would the 4 kiss names for these characters be? Ringo. Let's go with Rachel. Rachel sounds good. Madoka. Madoka. That's too many syllables for kids. Let's go with Maddie. and Ari too. Yeah, that's too complicated. Let's go with Ariel. Yeah, Maddie and Ariel. Those
I was gonna be like, you can't do Alice because her doll is named Alice.
Okay, no, I'm not that lazy.
But 4 kids could be.
No, 4 kids would name the girl Alice and then change the doll's name to Ariel. Just to be extra confusing.
Oh, yeah, that's what happened, wouldn't it? Okay, so being serious for 10 seconds. Mariela Ortiz as Ringo. Mariela Ortiz is not an actress I'm familiar with at all, but out of like all the female characters, I think her performance definitely sounded like probably the most exaggerated. Like, not the most exaggerated. Like, hey, this is what I guess what they thought idol characters should sound like back then. It's very exaggerated, very like loud, very like this is supposed to sound over the top and perky, even in a way that sounded like a little fake at points. And I mean, I didn't think the performance was like particularly grating or anything, but there definitely was. But there definitely was a layer to it that just sounded kind of fake to me in a sense. So I couldn't like get super into the performance. But I thought she still had like a pretty solid amount of enthusiasm regardless, and she definitely made the character sound like very perky and energetic, which is kind of supposed to be the deal, I guess, because again, this is an idol character, and I did think she had like a pretty interesting dynamic with Misaki, and kind of helping her to come out of her shell a little bit more. I thought that was pretty interesting. But I didn't have like too many thoughts on her aside from that. And then Madoka and Arisu, the mean girls of this show. Shelley Colleen Black is probably one of my favorite actresses down by the Houston front, so she was one of the ones I actually recognized almost immediately. This is definitely not one of her better performances. I thought she sounded pretty okay here. She definitely had the right amount of nastiness to her performance, which is definitely appropriate for a character who is effectively a cheater. So I definitely liked the level of spite she gave and all of her interactions with Misaki. I thought that was pretty interesting. And it definitely made her eventually losing and getting her comeuppance in a sense all the more satisfying. Mandy Clark as Arisu. She didn't stand out quite as much to me, but I thought she also had a pretty appropriate amount of spite to her. I thought she did a pretty good job bouncing off of Shelley and Misaki's actress. And I thought the whole arc about her kind of learning to make her own doll and not just like relying on her sister was pretty interesting. I thought the handle team made it at the end was kind of cute, so that was nice, I guess. And I guess that's my thoughts on these 3.
Thank you, Jet.
Let's see. Start with the Fujisaki sisters, who I thought they did very well. I liked their little episode storyline. I thought it was also nice coming off the heels of the. Who's that first lady who really has it out with Suzuhara? Kind of the mean, snooty girl who's a high schooler.
Oh, the girl with the Oh God, fuck! I don't remember her name. Let me look it up because we're not talking about her. But
I know, but like she's kind of she's your baseline kids villain, rival. Where she's just kind of a jerk.
It's not the girl with the ice skating doll. That was pretty baller.
But I think if memory serves, like you encounter these two not too long after her, and it just felt like kind of a nice contrast. Where like here's kind of your baseline, who's just really a jerk for the most part. And this guy felt like the point where we started getting opponents who have more like sort of
Maria.
Yes,
Maria.
Her. Thank you.
The girl who's like, my parents named me Maria. Fuck them.
Some people, I swear. And then we get the Fujitaki sectors. That feels like kind of where you start getting more opponents for Misaki who have a little more like depth to them. They have an arc, and you know they have sort of a driving force that's a little more relatable or at least understandable. And I think Shelley and Mandy do a good job at that. I very much bought them as sisters. Like I thought they had good repartee. Like they felt like, they have a connection and they have conflict, but they're sisters and they care for each other. Particularly in that like introductory episode, I thought they did a good job, and it was good seeing them show up again throughout. I really like the way the show like incorporates the sort of opponent characters and has them stick around and not just be like complete one-offs you see once and never again. And I thought they put in just a nice, good, strong performance. Like good grasp of the characters. I liked it when they showed up. It was nice. And as Ringo, Mariella does a great job of just being way too on all the time. Just, I know you're an idol, but you can stop a little bit. Even on your days off, you can... Why don't you, let's crank that 10 down to a 6, shall we? Are you really wearing a trench coat trying to hide in that dress and that hair? I don't think you're going to fool anybody. But Mariella, I think, just has a lot of fun playing this character. She's clearly just having a blast playing this just very loud, enthusiastic woman who is so very into Angelic Layer, even though she's already completely famous in another field entirely. But like, Angelic Layer. I enjoyed her a lot. She was just very fun. She was good at just being this, not quite wacky comic relief, but just very like big and over the top whenever she showed up. She's a good performance. Once again, just a nice solid set of characters. Marielle in particular feels like she's not the best example, we'll get to him, but a good example of kind of how I think ADV was very good at playing like cartoony characters like this, like people who are a little more kind of slightly above kind of like baseline normal reality for the rest of the show. And I liked it a lot. It was good.
Okay. I think I'll start with the twins.
No, they're older sister, younger sister.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. They're just really... They got the Mean Girls thing down pat, and I like their little mini story arc before, they actually kind of... They get beaten by, oh god, I'm blanking on her name. Yeah, they get beat by Misaki and sort of help her out as they go. Like, that was all well and good. Particularly like the whole party scene after she wins the regional tournament, but like that little story arc that they get, I think it was like 2 episodes where they're just like absolute bastards, like sabotaging Hikaru. That is some grade A kids show villain bullshit, and I am 100% for it. I also, while the performance was just kind of okay to me, I really like that, they played the characters absolutely seriously. Like, this game is their life, man. And that little arc was just absolutely fun. And then Ringo, as someone was saying, she could probably afford to take it down maybe a notch. That's more of a character thing than a performance, so. Yeah, Mariella did a really good job just keeping that energy level all the way up. Maybe breaking the knob in the process and then getting stuck there. I think that's kind of a little bit of a tricky situation to get yourself out of. Anyway. Trying to think of a really good standout moment for her. I can't remember who Misaki was fighting, but when she shows up in the trench coat, in front of Kotaro and Tamayo,
I think it's, oh, is it when she's fighting, it's either when she's fighting Kaede or, Sai.
Yeah, that sounds about right. But she just kind of shows up and she's just like, yeah, hi! I'm here to watch the fight, and I'm trying to avoid my creepy manager who's micromanaging my life. All his smiles! But yeah, this was really fun all around. Solid thumbs up over here.
Alright, cool. I'll start with, Ringo. Out of all of the performances for kind of the main character, like the main group that stays around, Ringo is not my favorite of the performances. She's a little too over the top. I think sometimes she comes off a little flat in her delivery of exposition. I'm not super familiar with Mariella's work, but she did sound definitely like I was actually surprised that she was in Railgun. I was like, this seems like a person who probably didn't do a lot of acting after this. But, she was okay. I think, if anything, out of the kind of core cast, I think she's probably, like, my least favorite or my weakest performance. I do think that she's a little too over the top at all times. I know, at one point, I think I just throw in the chat is, why does this bitch have a hamster in her hat? 'Cause she does at one point.
He's just there.
It's just there. I also, by the way, I actually really like her angel a lot. Ranka's really cool. I think that the whole she uses the wind to air slash is kind of great. I think she's got one of the cooler design angels. Madoka and Arisu are so interesting because I also really like Shelley Colleen Black and I actually couldn't realize that was her. I think she does a great job as Madoka. I think she has that. I think they sound a little bit older, but then again, I looked this up, and apparently a lot of these characters were actually born in the 80s. The late 80s. So, I think she's in high school, maybe, at the most, and Arisu is maybe, I think Madoka's, last year of high school, and Arisu's maybe first year. But I think she has a lot of that spite and anger down, and by the time at the end, I think she really does sell the delivery of the whole, I've kind of forgot why I got into this in the first place, and I'm gonna do things for myself instead of relying on my sister to win my battles for me. And you do feel very, very good at the end when they kind of grow from cheating and become their own people, separate from each other. Mandy was pretty good as Arisu. I don't think she's as weak as Mariella as Ringo for me. But she's got times where she wavers a bit. I do think that she sells when, she goes, I hate Ojiro, after earlier in the show asking for his autograph, and Ojiro is one of my favorite characters in this, but we'll get to him. I think she does a pretty good job there, and I like how she is the most tsundere character in the show to me. Cause there are even times later on where she's like, I'm not gonna let, Misaki beat me, or Alice, isn't that right? As she, villain pets her Barbie doll. But I also like how she brings flowers for her. She's like, it's not like I got you this because I like you or anything, Baka. So, I really did like Mandy, but I really like Shelley. I think out of the three of them, she was my standout performance, and I think that she has that, level of petty, angry teenager, but also wistful old megalobox fighter. It's so weird to talk about this show because I love Megalobox to pieces, but, you really don't get a show where, almost every combatant is a woman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
It really is, we're gonna talk about, literally one of the other major male characters in a minute, but I really like that these guys also stick around, and I also really like how earlier on in the series, where I do think things are a little bit slower, that they along with Sai and Kaede, or as the show pronounces it, Katie, which, boy howdy, we'll get to that, that they kind of provide this exposition, not as a thing of, we're gonna exposition dump, but as people who are sizing up a new opponent, and I think they portray that very well. And I think Mandy as Arisu does as well. Alright, are we ready to move off the layer and into the cheerleader role?
Let's do it.
So, because they don't play Angelic Layer, and I really couldn't think of the way to organize these last two sections, let's talk about the moral support, Kotaro Kobayashi. He's a nice middle school boy who is in Misaki's class that she transferred to, where they go to Ariel High School, cause ha ha ha. If you thought Tsubasa Chronicles had enough clamp referential material. Kotaro is a nice, well-meaning boy who clearly has a thing on Misaki, but doesn't realize that the girl crushing his windpipe has a crush on him. Because apparently he didn't realize that, hey, buddy, the childhood friend should win every so often. Speaking of the childhood friend, Tomoyo Kitaki. Tomoyo is energetic, loud, and she's a fan of wrestling. She is the people's elbow. There's also Shoko Asami. Shoko Asami is Misaki's aunt, but don't call her aunt because she is still a young lady, so she calls her Miss Shoko. She is also a famous television anchor in Tokyo, and she is also the person who is basically goading her sister into a guilt complex. Playing Kotaro is Kevin Korn, and playing Tamayo is Monica Rial. Kevin Korn you'll know as Joel in Nyoranga, Suzu Kitamura in Peacemaker, but everyone pretty much knows him for the one other really big show that he ever did, which is that he is Daisuke Niwa in the D and Angel dub. Monica Rial, you'll know her as Florette Fiore Havernheit in Chrono Crusade, Hyoki Shinono in Infinite Stratos, and Yuko Yoshida in The Demon Girl Next Door. Shoko Asami is played by Kelly Manson, who you'll know as Compiler in Compiler, Maggie in Crossange, but I think a lot of you guys would know her as Naga the Serpent in the Slayers series.
Okay, so, before I begin again, real quick, 4 consents for these characters. Kotaro, that one is really easy. Go with Kevin.
Double thing!
Tamayo, Tammy. I feel like that one's kind of cheating because there actually is a character in another 4 Kids stuff with that name. But I don't care. And Shoko, Shannon, let's go with that.
Auntie Shannon?
Yeah, see, you can already hear it, can't you?
Yep.
Okay, so I will actually start with Shoko because she kind of has the least new out of these 3. Again, I'm not super familiar with Kelly Benson. I don't think I've really heard her in anything that I can recall. As I did think she sounded maybe kind of flat here. For a lot of the early parts of the show, it wasn't super distracted or anything, but it but it was kind of the similar problem I had with Ringo, where it's a kind of weird exaggeration of what this character archetype is supposed to be. The archetype in this case being kind of the mature but kind of fun-loving odd. So there's definitely just kind of this weird exaggeration where she's clearly trying to sound kind of peppy and energetic, but in a way that seems kind of fake at times, so that was a little off-putting to me. And a lot of her interactions with Misaki, but I think when it kind of came to a lot of her stuff with Shuko and a lot of how Shuko was kind of running away from her responsibilities with Misaki, I thought Kelly sounded a little better and in those serious moments where he's kind of talking to Shuko. But even then, I thought it was still maybe a little shaky at points. Again, I didn't think it was super distracting or anything, but it was probably one of the weaker performances in the dub for me. And Kevin Korn is Kotaro. I have not seen Dan Angel. I mean, actually, I think I probably have, but that was years ago, and it was maybe only 1 episode, so I don't remember what he sounded like there at all. Here, I definitely have to say that it was probably the performance that took me most getting used to. I'm not totally sure if this is true, but it definitely sounded like he was probably a child actor, was he?
I don't think he was.
I don't know, that's very much the impression his performance gave off to me. I mean, it's probably wasn't, but it's just the way he sounded. It sounded like actually, like, genuinely youthful in a sense. So I thought, okay, maybe this is like an actual child actor. As yeah, so like for a lot of the early episodes, I thought his performance sounded a little off-putting. He sounded a little, he sounded a little wonky at points, like he was having a really hard time kind of trying to get his footing. And I thought his performance was, I thought his performance was kind of shaky and a little wooden. Um, but as the show went on, I thought he did a little better, and I kind of liked how he bounced off of Tumblr at points, and I thought their interactions were kind of cute. His interactions with Misaki also kind of, but like less so. And I think as the show went on, and he had like a little more to do, Kevin's performance got a little stronger. But I would say that out of like the major characters, it was all probably the weakest one to me. But they say that of this section is probably Monica Rial and Fabio because, it's Monica Rial, and she's definitely the name you would probably recognize the easiest out of these three, for very obvious reasons. Uh, she was also the very first actor in this show I actually recognized right away, which is how I pieced it into this was an ADV dub because I wasn't totally sure where this was recorded before we actually sat down and talked about this. Yeah, so it was definitely a very pleasant surprise hearing her. I will say that I actually thought she did sound like a little shaky in the beginning, I guess because this was probably really early on in Monica's career, so I don't know if she had like a really good handle on her style yet, so she sounded like maybe a little shaky in the early parts of the show, and a couple of her and a couple of her lines maybe sound a little more wooden than I'm used to hearing her sound these days. But I will say that, like, out of everyone here, I think she kind of eased into her performance the fastest. She definitely improved a lot as the show went on. And I definitely thought she had the right amount of, like, bubbly energy as, like, the best friend character. And she did a really good job bouncing off of Misaki, who's kind of shy all the time. And Kotaro, who's just kind of a dork. I thought their interactions were a lot of fun. And speaking of Kotaro, when it came time to kind of address Tameo's crush, I thought that Monica did a really good job of making that whole thing come off as really believable and just, making her come off as like, making her very much come off as a preteen dealing with her first crush and how she's kind of annoyed that Kotaro never really saw her as a girl. I thought she handled that whole thing really well. And I thought Monica's performance was really solid here. Not quite my favorite out of the entire dub, but definitely up there. I thought she did a really good job here. I think I'm done.
Alright. Let's start. I like Kelly's performance of Shoko, even though she is the more minor example in the show of help, I need an adult, I am an adult. Poor Misaki. She gets hassled by so many adults in the show. It's very tragic. I did like her performance, especially when you have these scenes where she is talking to Shuko that show up later on. I think particularly like she's like very fun and bubbly when she's talking to Misaki, and it's very entertaining. But I did like that. I did think Kelly was able to bring out the dramatic weight the character needs when those show up, especially when it's like you should really go talk to your daughter you haven't seen in 6 years and have been deliberately avoiding. Maybe that's a good thing you should be doing, and not this thing you have been doing, which is to avoid her all the time. It was a good performance. At worst, just marred by the fact that Shoko, after the initial batch of episodes, isn't too prominent anymore. She kind of gets put aside in favor of, the more Angelic Layer centric people, which, but I think Kelly does a good job for what she has to do. Let's talk about Kevin and Monica, because I feel like they're going to be the meat of this section. Kevin is the correct level of, like, dopey preteen teenage boy who doesn't get it ever until you just state the completely blindingly obvious, because he's 13 and not the brightest of men. And I actually think he hits that very well. Like, I totally buy that he is, like, very well-meaning, and he has affections for people, but he's kind of dunderingly oblivious to everything around him. And I thought Kevin did a really good job of capturing that aspect of the character. To the point that when you start at the end of the show, when you start getting weird romantic angst that wasn't here for the past 18 episodes, especially between him and Tamayo, it's like, yeah, I actually do feel this. This is really out of left field in the context of the show, but I'm buying it right now. So good job.
It actually gets hinted at like a little bit earlier in the series.
I think it did. It's that I think part of it's. I think I think I've watched the show all the way through at least once and don't remember it very well. And I definitely remember the robot fighting. I don't think I remember the.
I think it's when Misaki goes to Kotaro to learn how to fix her weak point, and she leaves her stuff because it's gonna rain.
Right. Yeah.
And she grabs him and holds him for a minute and whispers something, but then she plays it off. So like it's there as early as like the beginning of the second half of the show.
No, I think it's not that it doesn't get hinted at. It's more, my expectations weren't. Look, this is very normal by Clamp standards, and I got lulled into a false sense of security. So even though the really clampy parts aren't that weird by Clamp standards, they still stuck out a little bit. That's because, we've all seen the image of their JoJo Dojin. We know what they're about. Yep. They're an odd set of people, bless them. Where is I going? On the other side of that, I really like Monica as Tamayo. She is great here. She is so very energetic and peppy. Tamayo is clearly cut from the same cloth as, what's her face in Azumango, whose name I can't remember, but you know who I'm talking about. And I think, Monica, I think she just does a swell job. She is so good at being just big and energetic, and it never gets grating or wearying. She always knows how to put it out there, but not go too much over the top. And of course, happily, I know this is probably relatively early in her career, but we have Monica Rial playing this character, so when the dramatic stuff kicks in, she can do that too, because she's Monica Rial. And is there anything Monica can't do? We're not sure yet. Eat her own head, maybe, but we want that anyways. That'd be grotesque. I think she and Kevin, I think, do play off each other really well, both when they are being sort of friendly, caustic childhood friends, where she'll put him in a headlock and give him a noogie, and also in the more like muddling through their complicated teenage emotions and figuring out what to do with all that information. The whole bit where they're stuck in the elevator was really well done in particular. I think that's an especial highlight of both of their performances. I really like them. They're good. Thumbs up.
All right. I think I'll start like everybody else with Shoko. Not really a lot to the character. I did think there were moments that her performance fell just a little bit flat. Looks like somebody who doesn't really do much in the way of anime character voice acting nowadays, so yeah. I do sort of like the scenes where she is trying to smack some sense into her sister, trying to pull her out of her own head and interact with her own daughter. I thought that was the peak part of this performance. And like I said, Shoko is front and center within the show a lot as sort of the main Angelic Layer reporter, but there isn't really too much that stood out for me in terms of a vocal performance. Honestly, I'm gonna have to agree with Jet in that I actually do. It feels like Kevin Korn was a sort of a child actor when he played Kotaro. Because I actually noticed his voice broke a lot. And honestly, for that reason, it actually didn't take me too long to adjust to his performance. It did feel a little wonky at times, but at the same time, I could actually believe that the voice that was being presented was coming out of sort of a middle-aged kid. A middle school-aged kid. I'm tired.
It's okay, baby.
And what can I say about Monica Rial that hasn't already been said? She's probably one of the standout performances of the show as a whole. Her character arc with Kotaro is absolutely excellent within the context of the show and within the dub. She nails sort of smacking Kotaro down with the people's elbow and then turning around and just sort of, you know I love you, right, dummy? And then breaking down because Kotaro doesn't initially get it. That idiot. Baka. I really like sort of the whole thing between episodes 21 and 22 where Kotaro and Tamayo are sort of dealing with the aftermath of Tamayo's confession. I think this was a pretty solid group of performances overall. And I am all done.
Alright, so let's talk about Shoko first, Kelly. I do agree that Kelly has parts where she's really flat, but I do think that she excels in those moments where she's trying to get Shuko to come out of her own ass, basically. Her head and somewhat of her ass. And I do want to praise the writing of the show for having her explicitly state, because a thing that we haven't exactly brought up yet is why her mom is gone. And I kind of wanted to save it for that section, but I need to bring it up here with Shoko. Shuko left because she had a neurologic disorder that was taking the function away from her legs. And I believe some of her other extremities. So she wanted to go get treatment, and eventually they find a treatment that can work. No doctor's gonna help her, and then they eventually come upon Ichan, and things go from there. But there's a really great line that she delivers, which is, "There are plenty of parents with disabilities who raise their children just fine. Just come home and me, you, and Misaki can live together." And she delivers that so well, because, frankly, like, she's right in that moment. I do wish that Kelly's performance would have stayed more, even throughout the entire show. Kevin Cord is weird because I am the one person on this entire panel who has sat through all of D and Angel. Am I wrong?
No.
No, you're not.
I'm gonna bring that to a con next time, and we're gonna have a great time seeing what, like, okay, Gigi talks about shoujo trash, but, like, D and Angel is, like, peak early 2000s trash.
I definitely saw at least the first episode, and that at least sounds correct, based on what I remember.
Like, if you don't know what, and to derail from this, the entire plot of D and Angel is that upon his 15th birthday, a kid becomes, against his own will, a thief and has to steal for his family, and it's a curse that has run in his family for years. And he goes from being wimpy, wimpy, wimpy to sexy, sexy, sexy. That's the show. And then weird angel bolic shit happens, and there's twins, and there's, like, a weird NTR subplot. Like, it is peak trash.
Wild.
It is What If Domestic Girlfriend, but the sexy shared a body.
That's a odd mental image.
I am totally bringing it to a con. We're gonna have a great time. Yeah, yep, I have it. I have the weird, I think I have the re-release that Discotech did. But Kevin is a voice that I actually know, and I specifically know his voice because his voice is very distinct. I think he does a pretty good job here. I actually believe him as this 13-year-old kid. I did look and I tried to find some information about his age, but nothing is listed, unfortunately, so I can't tell you if he's a child actor or not. I can only ask you to look at a picture of him and make your own determination from there, and even then, I don't want to do that. I could believe that this was a middle school kid's voice that was going through puberty, and I thought he did a pretty good job. I do think it's very clear that there's a reason I don't think his career took off. I know I was talking to Hardy about him, and Hardy can't stand him and called him the anti-Aaron Dismuke. And I'm like, that's a little harsh. He's fine. I think he does a pretty good job. I know there are times where he does sound like an absolute teenage boy, like, where he's like, well, I didn't see you as a girl, and Tomoyo gets absolutely righteous fury. And you're just like, shut the fuck up, Steve. Shut the fuck up, Kevin. I also find it really funny that Kotaro keeps getting, like, I don't want to say blue-balled, but he gets dick-whacked by his own, like, 5-year-old little sister. Like, his 5-year-old little sister talks about how much of a putz he is, and it's kind of great. And I love the delivery is, I don't know what these 5-year-olds are watching these days, so she knows what kissing is. No, Misaki says that, and she goes, she listens to adults too much. So sometimes I think it does, like, the age variation goes on, but, like, once you get used to it, it's not as distracting as it could have been. I actually really like Monica in this. This is, like, this is not, like, the god tier of Monica-dom. Like, this isn't Michiko or anything like that, or even some of her best Moe performances, but I really like her, mostly because Tomoyo looks like me in middle school if I wasn't fat. She's also the type of person I would be. Like, I look at Tomoyo, I'm like, oh god, that is just 13-year-old Megan. Except for I wasn't as violent. I say as violent because I kicked a lot of people in the balls.
You're a different kind of violent.
I did whack a kid in middle school over her head with a copy of Fruits Basket, so there's that.
Blast.
Specifically a volume with Kagura. I did not, and it was with a copy of Kagura. It was the copy with Kagura on it, so it was perfectly acceptable. Don't be a bully. But I really like her, and I really do. I think the thing that really sells it for me is that she is, I think, the person in the show that has the best dramatic chops. The stuff on the beach, the stuff in the elevator, I think she nails that shit. And it's really, really good, and it's kind of worth checking out the show just for her performance at points, because she does have to be the loud, obnoxious cheerleader girl, but she also has to play, like, kind of dumb, but also be an exposition dump. Overall, I think she does a pretty good job, and it's actually one of the performances from the dub that I like the most. So, there's that. Alright, are we ready to move on to the next set of characters?
Yep.
Yeah.
So let's move on to the national games, or Nice Ice and Quiet. There is Kaede Seto and her angel Blanche, who I've just nicknamed Murder Mercedes. For all of you who play Fire Emblem Three Houses. Kaede is a nice, sweet girl whose mom is gone, and her dad works for a company, and she actually gets one of the original shipment of angel eggs. She's a nice, quiet, motherly type of girl who refers to her angel as her daughter. Also, her angel basically has Super Saiyan Hyper Mode and will beat the shit out of you. At the cost of its health going down faster. Sai Junuchi has the angel Shirahime, the ultimate defense angel in the show, who, essentially, she is the quiet, tall girl who makes everybody gay when they see her, if you have a vagina or identify as a woman. She doesn't like giving autographs, and you find out that she plays Angelic Layer not because she originally was into it, but that her terminally ill little sister was, and that her terminally ill little sister Rin designed Shirahime herself. And then there is Hitoko Kobayashi and her angel Suzuka. Hitoko is 5. She started playing Angelic Layer when she was like 3 or 4 and is already the goddess of victory, has a bunch of fanboys. Did we mention that she is 5? Not like Lolly with like ancient 3,000-year-old Lolly with a body of a 5-year-old. No, she is actually a 5-year-old kindergartner who is one of the best Angelic Layer players, and whose angel Suzuka is known as the speed of sound Suzuka. She literally moves faster than you can blink, and the only way that I can describe her as Omae wa shinderu.
You love to see it.
Yeah.
That's right, kids. This is a show that gave a 5-year-old a Fist of the North Star gender bento C.
Bless.
She's also basically Misaki's best friend, her second, and her ultimate rival. She gets knocked out by Shirahime at the Kanto games and she basically becomes her Nanbu. Except for I actually think that Hitoko could probably outsmart Nanbu.
Probably.
Look, I like Nanbu, but I don't know if that's actually hard.
Also, shonen battle anime are cowards. Let more girls win. Playing Kaede, or Katie as the show likes to say it, is Tiffany Terrell. Playing Sai is Tiffany Grant, and playing Hitoko is Sasha Pasinger. Tiffany Terrell, you'll know as characters such as Makoto Sawatari in Kanano 6, Sylph in Shining Hearts, and Ki in Monster Musume, and if you're all wondering who Ki is, she is the giant tree. that they fight, like, towards the very end. You remember the part where they fight the kaiju tree?
Mm-hmm. Godzilla shows up?
That's her.
That's my favorite scene.
Yeah. So that's who plays that giant Godzilla tree. Is also Kaede, the nice, sweet mom lady.
Makes sense.
Tiffany Grant, you'll know as the original dub voice for Asuka Langley Suriel in Neon Genesis Evangelion, Sumer Aosui in EF A Tale of Memories and Tale of Melodies, and Coco in Suritama. Sasha Paysinger, you'll know as August in Coyote Ragtime Show, Asami Iragashi and Mezzo in the voice of Nodoka Miyazaki in UQ Holder. Yeah, that threw me for a loop that she was in fucking UQ Holder, a dub that I think came out like a year ago.
Wonders never cease, man.
Yeah. Okay, so 4 kids' names for these. Kaede, that was really easy. I mean, they kept pronouncing it as Kaede for some reason, so I just went with Kaede.
I think when I put that, I was like, it is like, her name is Kaede, but they keep pronouncing it Katie, and Ruth's exact reaction is, wait, her name isn't Katie?
Yeah.
Yeah, Sai. This one I had a lot of trouble with because I was like, what's an American name that starts with an S that's like one syllable? So I had to like really think about it. I was like, you know what? Let's go with Shay. Shay sounds good. Okay, and then Hitoko, that was really easy. Again, Hitoko, too many syllables for kids. Let's go with Haley. That sounds like a perfectly acceptable name to give a 5-year-old. Let's go with that. Starting with Tiffany Torella's Kaede. Again, the name pronunciation here is kind of weird, but I just kind of rolled with it after a while. I thought he did a pretty solid job here. And again, a lot of the performances here do kind of sound like exaggerations of archetypes that have been kind of refined since then. But I didn't think that everyone, he probably did the best job with the archetypes he was going for. In this case, kind of being like the very nice girl with a kind of motherly tone. I thought that Tiffany did a really good job of kind of getting that tone across really well. As I am kind of sounding very sweet and pleasant coming off of Sai, who's just kind of like very stoic and quiet. And I thought those two had a pretty good dynamic going, and I definitely liked how Tiffany played off of Misaki's actors during their fight. I thought that whole thing was pretty fun, and especially how Misaki kind of got a little closer towards learning Hikaru's quote unquote weakness, which I guess in hindsight was kind of obvious, but it was sort of weird how long they dragged that out for a while. Moving on to Tiffany Grant as Sae. Tiffany Grant is an actress I'm like decently familiar with at this point. I don't think I definitely didn't recognize her right away, but I'm a little. What I think of Tiffany usually is along the lines of Atsuko, so. And this is definitely a lot more mature sounding than that, so it kind of threw me for a loop. Again, Sai is supposed to be kind of stoic and reserved, so I thought that Tiffany did a pretty good job of getting that across. And I will see that, like, probably next to Misaki, Sai probably had the most, like, serious backstory out of all these characters. Because with some of these characters, you get things like, oh, boys are better than girls, or, like characters who have like maybe complexes about their height or something. It's like no, with her, I think it's like dead sibling or something like that.
Yeah, it's her sister has a terminal illness.
It's not just a dead sibling. It's dead children, just to make it extra grim.
A dead younger sister.
Yeah. That's what I said with like. Okay, I think if this was a fork and stuff, they could probably get away with keeping like all the stuff with Yuko the same, but it's like. But in her case, I think like Sai's sister would probably come up with some weird way for her to not be dead.
Oh, she'd just be sick in the hospital. That's all.
Yeah.
She got transferred for business.
She's sick and Sai has to win the game to make her sister happy.
Yeah.
Sai, if you don't win, we're pulling the plug. You have to win, Sai, or your little sister won't live to see another day.
No, that's from the Angelic Layer 4 Kids abridged version.
Oh right.
In this universe,
Pilot the little robot. Or your sister will have to do it again.
Battle the Angel, Fraser or Niles will have to do it
again. All right. So, lastly, Sasa Paysinger as Hitoko. Again, Sasa Paysinger is not a name I'm super familiar with. Like, when I did see the name, I was pretty sure I'd heard it somewhere before, so when I saw it was in Yuki Holder, I was like, oh, okay, since it wasn't something recent. So, again, going back to what I said before, with a lot of the actors here kind of sounded like exaggerations of archetypes that have kind of been improved since then. There's definitely like an archetype of what a little girl should sound like, and it's definitely kind of hokey sounding in that respect because it definitely doesn't sound like. I mean, it sounds like a kid, but not really. It's like kind of weird in that sense. But she definitely was trying to go for, I guess, something kind of youthful and cutesy. So I guess in that respect, it kind of worked really well. And I mean, I thought she did a pretty good job of making Hitoko come off as pretty adorable. And I definitely liked a lot of her interactions with Misaki, especially like early on, where she's just kind of getting to know her. I definitely kind of liked how much she kind of initially teased her and Katara about like them having a not crush. I thought that whole thing was pretty funny. And I guess her not ultimately being able to read a room on that, but again, she is 5 somehow. I mean, again,
Go with it, Jack.
I mean, again, this isn't like a super serious show. I've definitely seen a lot of like weird, exaggerated stuff in toy shows, so I'm not like super weirded out by this. But as far as I know, okay, no, she's apparently been trashing people since he was like 4. It's just kind of mind blowing to me. It's like I want to question how that works, but it's gonna roll with it. But anyway, I thought that Sasha did a pretty good job here. I definitely liked how much he bounced off of Misaki's actors in particular. Especially during the back half of the show where they become partners. I thought that the episode where Misaki was kind of like deciding who she wanted to be as her second, and like Hitoko was like really certain she was going to be picked, and then like spent the rest of the episode kind of doubting herself, was like probably the closest you ever kind of see Hitoko to ever actually acting her age in the show. And I thought that Sasha did a pretty good job in that episode. I thought that whole thing was pretty fun. If I had one complaint about the show, it's that it felt like they were kind of building up to those two having a rematch, and then it just like never happened for some reason. I thought it would have been pretty nice if that happened, but that's just kind of like a nitpick. And I think the show ultimately like got the core of what it needed to anyway. But it would have been nice if those two got a rematch. And yeah, I think I'm done.
All right. Where to start? I like Tiffany as Katie. Yeah. Now I don't.
Kaede.
Now I don't even remember how.
Just call her Katie.
But I want to get it right. How can I be a pedantic nerd on the internet if I don't try and get the Japanese pronunciation right? Katie. I liked her. I thought she did. When she first introduced, she does a good job of being very like fun and quirky. And look at her, she like ventriloquist dummy talks her doll, and it's very charming. And then as time goes on, it gets a little weird, and it's like, oh, you have, oh, I see where this is coming from. Oh, that's rough. I thought Tiffany handled that really well. I thought she was good as being, kind of funny and oddball, but also when her, her tragic backstory comes out of giving the dramatic weight that needed. I thought she had a good, strong performance. I like Tiffany as well. This is. I'm not gonna say this is new for me because I'm sure I've heard other things by Tiffany where she's like this. But look, I own one of the older ADV Evangelion DVDs. I've seen that featurette they did that's just Tiffany Grant showing off the astonishing amount of Oscar merch she has. I know what character type she likes to play, not this. But she did. I thought she did a very nice job. She was very good at being stoic and quiet without coming off as too flat or emotionless. She very much felt, she's very cool and calm and collected, and I thought she did that really well. And also, I thought she did good when we find about her character's incredibly depressing backstory, because For kids, right?
She's not dead. She just went to a farm up north.
Yeah, we sent her to a hospital down in Osaka where they have better treatment for her particular illness there. Don't worry, she's watching all your matches on the TV. She'll be fine. We swear. Don't. What? Dead children? I don't know what you're talking about.
That's not a grave she's visiting at the very end of the show. That's a 7-Eleven. She's getting her a new toy.
No. This is they'll either edit that scene out or write in something about how her grandfather, who we never see, was the one who first inspired them to get an Angelic Layer in the first place, and that's the grave she's visiting. So because he would have been old, and so it's okay. What else? And I think the Tiffany and Tiffany play off each other really well. Megan, I think, as you noted, they have very strong couple vibes.
Yes.
And I mean, it's clamp, so that feels probably a little intentional. And I think Tiffany, they both play into that enough that it comes off as kind of authentic. It's like, yeah, no, these two are probably dating. It's very cute. And Sasha as Hitoko. On the one hand, you can tell Hitoko is being played by an adult woman using a voice. On the other hand, I kind of feel like that almost works. Like, the show is so goofy that having an actual child here would probably seem more weird than this. And I actually think for what it is, I think she does turn in a nice performance. She gets a lot of mileage out of that squeaky voice. I'm actually really impressed by a lot of it. Especially when you start getting like the episode where she thinks she's not going to be Misaki's second, and she's just so bummed out about it. And you feel for her. It's like, oh. And of course, we the audience know it's like, Misaki's not going to do that. You're her friend. She's definitely going to pick you. Don't be sad, small child. It's heartbreaking. You're literally a sad 5-year-old. Why are you doing this? This is supposed to be a fun show about Barbie dolls fighting each other.
Remember to have fun on the layer, everybody.
Yeah, she's very sweet and cute, and I especially think, well, for one, it's fun to watch her razz on her brother. She's very good at doing that. And I think her and Misaki's actress have really good repartee. Like, they do genuinely feel like friends. So we know, and it's like, oh, of course I'm going to pick you as my second. You're my friend. It's like, yeah, buddies. It's especially very cute, in the second half of the show where the eye catch card turns from being just Misaki to being Misaki and Hitoko. It's just like, aww. Look at these two.
I will say that, if you have the big ADV chipboard art, box, on the one side is Misaki and the other side is, Atsuko.
I feel like, if there's like a secondary, he's not quite secondary main character, if you ask me, like, who's the most important angelic player, aside from maybe, Shuko, it's definitely Hitoko. It's like, yeah, you deserve that eye catch card position. You take that. Yeah, so this is another one of those performances that feels like you can, like, oh, this is very much like an early 2000s anime dub, but I think she does like a very nice job with it. It feels very true to what this dub is doing in a way that I like. I had a lot of fun listening to it.
Okay, yeah, I will start with Blanche. I do like sort of her debut in the series where I do have to ask though, Sai and Kaede, were they sort of affiliated with Madoka and Arisu? Or were they just kind of randomly talking in the audience in the Kanto games?
I think it was that they knew them from last year's Kanto game, so they were just kind of like chilling out with them.
Okay. That's kind of what I thought, but I just had to be sure. I sort of like their observations of the tournament, and then Kaede actually shows up with her doll and uses it like a puppet. And I'm just like, oh, that's okay.
She makes me mildly uncomfortable.
Right.
In that moment.
And then as she's fighting, you start to get the bits of her backstory. I'm like, I can just sense this thing, and I'm thinking to myself as I'm watching, oh, this is a complex, isn't it? This is where we're getting into clamp territory. Bit earlier than I expected in a kid's show, but okay, I'll roll with it. But I do particularly like she does have that little sense of unhingedness to her that I thought the show was gonna roll with as the show progressed, but it kind of mellowed down, and I actually, nonetheless, I like Tiffany Terrell's performance in the back half of the series. You don't get much of her, but like she's interacting with everyone and just kind of grounded. It's a fine performance. And then you get Tiffany Grant as Sai, and like Amon was mentioning, this is definitely outside of the wheelhouse that I am used to hearing Tiffany Grant in. I mean, like, obviously, she is who I associate as Asuka in Evangelion, just because that's what I grew up with. And not to mention, like, as a bonus feature on the Eva DVD shows, she has the massive wall of Asuka figurines. So yeah, it took me being told that this was Tiffany Grant to find out it was Tiffany Grant. And usually when you do that, that's actually not a bad performance you're putting out. She's quiet, she's stoic, and then you get the tragic backstory, and then she starts to warm up a little. I actually kind of like the fact that she actually smiled as she was, it was when she was facing off against Shuko, right?
Yeah.
Where she was actually happy that she was participating in the tournament. Like, I really like that. And Sasha Pacinger as Hitoko, I'm going to admit I wasn't the biggest fan of this performance. Not only did she sound too old, I think it's a flaw of the show itself, but her dialogue was also written as way too old. Again, this isn't 100% the fault of the performance in my eyes. It's how the character was written in the context of the show. It felt like an adult in a 5-year-old's body, and it just felt weird in a way that I can't really describe. The latter half of the show, as I sort of got used to the character, it sort of evened out as a performance, but I don't know, there's just something a little off-putting about it that I can't put my finger on. Other than that, I think these performances were pretty solid all around.
Alright, so I'll talk about Tiffany and Tiffany first. I really like that Tiffany Terrell has that kind of warm, like, there's no other way to describe it. She's the big titty-o Nissan type archetype. I think that she gets that kind of well, and she gets the little bit. I think that you get that kind of like soft turn in her voice where at the national games you hear her overhear Misaki say, "If we win, then we're one step closer to seeing mom," because her mom is dead. Her mom is dead. If you didn't catch that. But I think Tiffany Terrell does a good job of being kind of the more warm, sisterly type character. She's also good at being kind of the strategic rock for Sai to bounce off of when they get to the national games. I think that she's just really sweet sounding and very, very adorable. And I really liked Kaede's character, and I really liked her performance as Kaede. I don't think it, like, overstated itself, but it didn't also understate itself. Tiffany Gray, yeah, I associate her with more, like, bubbly, more upbeat / tsundere characters. Hearing her be Sai, who almost speaks in a whisper, in my mind, but she's got that, like, she's gotta have the ice machine persona, but she's clearly, like, the big, tough, quiet one who's in this, and yes, if you ask me, Sai and Kaede are dating. But it's also really weird because in the canon of the manga for this, I think more than the anime, technically, this is one of the first things that connects to Chobits, is that, for any of you who've ever seen Chobits, Kaede is Mona Marshall character's older sister who's dead. So, I'm gonna reject the reality of the manga and substitute it with the anime where she gets to live and be a lesbian with Sai. Because it ain't a clamp anime unless two people of the same gender are dating. And then Sasha as Hitoko is really weird because I do agree with Roots where it's very much clearly like, I think this character would have benefited from not being a 5-year-old, but at the same time, I love the fact that she's a 5-year-old who talks like an adult. But I also think it is a little bit in character that she does talk like an adult, because I think even Kotaro says early on that she listens to adults talk way too much. And I think she takes the game more seriously than anything. Like, to the point where she shows up on, like, fucking Christmas to the Piffle Princess store and wants to practice. And the lady at the store is like, we're closed. God damn it, I'm gonna let you in anyway. The weird thing is that Sasha plays Hitoko, like, where she talks like this. And she talks in, like, this weird, false, childish whisper. And I think for people who are unused to it, it would come off as really jarring. I don't think it's a performance that would have flown in today's dubbing climate. But it sticks out as this really weird thing that is definitely clearly left in 2002, 2003. I don't think it's bad, but I also don't think that it's something that I would like in a dub today. And, like, if worse came to worse, I would like, if this ever did get redubbed, I would like Sasha to, like, replay the character, but obviously maybe have a director who's done more ADR work. Because when you actually look at the director's credits, he does a lot of DVD authoring. That was the big thing that David would. So, I enjoy it, but I don't think it's as strong as it is, and I do think that the performances in here are just mostly solid. Alright, are we ready to move on?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's finally time to get to the elephant in the room. Mommy had a good reason for leaving you. Let's talk about Shuko Suzuhara and her angel Athena, Ichiro Ichan Mihara, and because we had to put him somewhere, Ojiro Mihara and his angel wizard. Shuko is, obviously, like we said, Misaki's mom, who left her when she was 5 and has been gone for 7 years. She had a neurological disorder that costed the ability of her legs.
Also, she had to get milk and cigarettes.
Pretty much. And eventually, she basically is told in Tokyo that there is no cure for her condition, and she eventually comes upon a man named Ichiro who is trying to build prosthetics that use brain waves to move them. Eventually, they kind of team up with each other, but they run out of funding, and no one's gonna bankroll it, so they take the idea of a doll that they were using, because basically it looked like her daughter's doll back home, and they create Angelic Layer together. Ojiro is essentially Ichiro's younger stepbrother, who meets Shuko on a day where he's delivering stuff to his brother, and Shuko is his first love, but obviously because he is a small child and he knows that his brother wants that, he's gonna abide by the bro code and not go after her, but instead realize he wants the daughter instead.
You said Clamp wrote this? Yeah, that checks out.
And that kid's where the Clamp checks out. Playing Shuko Suzuhara is Christine Otten, playing Ichiro Mihara is Andy McGavin, and playing Ojiro Mihara is Chris Patton. Christine Otten, you'll know as characters such as Rizel in Chrono Crusade, Lamelda Jorg and Madlax, and Ozen in Maiden Abyss, and raise your hand if Ozen turns you on. That's me. Andy McGavin, you'll know as the Duke of Borgyle in Le Chevalier d'Eon, Director Kakuzawa in Elfen Lied, a series that is at the polar opposite end of wholesome from this show. And Jizaburo Matsuba in Outbreak Company, Chris Patton you'll know as Sasame in Pre-Tier, Fakir and Princess Tutu, and Toru Oikawa in Haikyuu.
Okay, so I'm gonna go right off the bat and say these are probably 3 of the best performances in the dub, all for different reasons. And it definitely makes sense that these are probably 3 of the most, like, prominent names in the dub. Okay, well, maybe not so much Andy. I mean, I think he...
Jet, are you not gonna give them 4 kids' names?
Of course, I'm getting to that. Yeah. Andy, not so much, but he definitely has been in at least, like, recent stuff. Okay, but anyway, before I get super serious, let's do 4 kids' names for these characters. So Shuko, that one's... Okay, Shuko, that one's kind of hard because I used Shannon already, so... You know what? Let's go with Sharon. Let's be lazy. Shannon and Sharon. That sounds about right. Okay, Ichiro, Ichan. That one was really easy. I said Iggy. I said Iggy because, like, come on, can you not imagine a character being named Wiggly Iggy? Okay, Ojiro. For that one, I went with Oliver. He just kind of seemed like an Oliver to me. And on that note, no one please don't come after me. So getting into the actual performances, I will start with Andy McAvin. I will say that, like, similar to Kevin Cord, he was a performance that it took a little bit for me to get used to. I've definitely heard Andy McAvin and other things before, but I didn't immediately recognize him. I think, like, the overall style of his tone was, like, a little off-putting to me at first. It's like this really weirdly exaggerated voice that's like, that's like very cartoony, even by, like, the standards of how all the other actors in this show sound. But also something about the exaggeration in his tone that kind of worked for this character specifically, because this character is very cartoony. So I think Andy's approach here kind of worked. And it does a really good job of making each on here come off with, like, a general goofball all the time. A character who has a very clearly important job, and he's not taking any of that very seriously. And I definitely appreciate the extent to which he just repeatedly shirks off his duties and puts them on other people. And by other people, I mean Ogata most of the time. That poor man. But at the same time, while he is definitely a very big goofball, he does have, like, a bit of a serious side to him, and I do kind of like how he kind of slowly guides Misaki as an advisor of sorts, even if the way he kind of initially interacts with her is sort of like is maybe a little creepy. I think in hindsight it does kind of work because I guess he knew who she was the entire time. I'd have to imagine he did, and if he did, then it does make sense as to why he was following her around in the first place. Because I guess he was thinking, if I get in, good for the daughter, I can get to the mother. And I respect that.
It is a clamp series.
I respect the hustle.
Those darn Mihara boys.
Well, looks like those darn Mihara boys are at again.
I thought he did a really good job of, like, kind of playing as an advisor of sorts of Misaki a lot of the time, and I thought their interactions were pretty good, even if he was kind of being a total goofball half the time. I thought it was pretty good, like, seeing how he kind of bounces between being a total goofball and being serious, and then seeing how he interacts with Yuko specifically, where instead of being those two things, he just kind of comes off as a total dork. And he just has he had a very bad time trying to express his crush. And I did feel very happy for him when he finally got it across, even if, like, and while the show ends before we get a definitive answer, but Chobits exists, so I guess that does kind of answer that. But yeah, I'm kind of glad things worked out for him, even if he probably should have given Ogata more work to stop, because again, he really abused the heck out of that poor guy. But anyway, let's move on to Chris Patton as Ojiro, which is which I'm not gonna lie, is probably the most natural sided performance out of this entire dub. Again, a lot of the performances here sound kind of hokey and exaggerated, but, like, not Chris. He knew exactly what he was going for with this character. He did a very good job of just kind of making him sound like very laid back and kind of mature for his age, even if he is a high schooler. And definitely was kind of interesting seeing that very relaxed tone bouncing off of how, like, crazy and exaggerated each other is all the time. And which definitely made the revelation that their brother is kind of all the more appropriate. And I definitely liked how those two bounced off of each other in a lot of their interactions. And I definitely thought, like, his whole backstory with Yuko was pretty interesting, and how she was his first love, and how part of the reason he admires her so much was that she kind of helped him to break the ice with his brother, and I thought that whole story was really sweet. him coming out to Misaki at the end was kind of weird, but I mean, it is Clem, so, like, yeah. I mean, it's probably far from the weirdest thing I've seen in the Clem show, so I guess, like, whatever. But either way, I definitely liked Chris's performance a lot. I thought he sounded the most, like, relaxed in his performance, and I really liked it a lot, so... And the male performances, like, definitely by far the strongest. And Christine Alton as Shuko. I'm obviously pretty familiar with Christine Alton at this point. I feel like I should have recognized her immediately, but like I wasn't thinking in terms of like ADV actors initially, so I wasn't totally sure who it was at first. Yeah, but now that I know it's Christine, I can definitely hear it. I will say I was maybe a little off put by this performance in the beginning. Not because I didn't think that Christine sounded good, but just that like her voice seemed maybe a little deep for like this character design. Because I guess this is like clearly supposed to be like a very kind of youthful, I guess, kind of sweet mother, and Christine's voice is like very deep, so hearing her voice come out of that character was a little off-putting at first. But as we got to see more of Shuko and like learn more about her, Christine definitely eased into the performance very quickly. And I thought she did a really good job of just kind of selling Shuko turmoil, just like over, effectively abandoning her daughter because, like, I mean, I think the way this show ends is very sweet, but, like, let's not mince words, Shuko is kind of a terrible parent.
No!
No.
Yeah. But I do think the show kind of handles her abandonment in a very, like, kind of realistic way. It's like where it is very clear that she has abandoned her daughter, but in her mind, she's thinking, like, no, I haven't abandoned her. I just have to do this one thing, and I'll come right back to her. But I just gotta keep doing this one thing, and keep doing this one thing, and keep doing this one thing. And then, like, 10 years have gone by. And it's like, yep, that's how you do a deadbeat parent. But anyway, I thought that Christine did a really good job of like selling all of that. I definitely very much bought into her like total breakdown towards the end of the show, and where she's just kind of really struggling over her illness and just like and everything that's going on with like her kind of shutting Misaki out, and not she handled all that really well. And when she finally realizes that she's just been running away from her this whole time, and she finally decides to show herself to Misaki, I thought that Christine did a really good job of making that whole transition feel really believable. Like, and then when the two of them are just kind of like sitting down and having like an awkward dinner for like the first time in like 10 years, I thought that Christine did a really good job of just selling that awkwardness. And when the two of them finally reconcile, it was very sweet, and Christine did a really good job there too. So, like, I was kind of shaky on the performance in the beginning, but, like, I think that by the end of it, it was probably my favorite performance in the dub, so, really good job, Christine. Awesome. And I'm done.
Where to start? So I'm going to start with Chris Patton, because of the three here, Ochuro has a lot to do, but he's probably the least of the characters. I do think he does a good job, though. He feels like the authentic cool teen boy, in contrast to Kevin's dopey, oblivious teen boy. He's definitely the one that all the people who read whatever the Angelic Layer version of Tiger Beat, they got the little pull-out poster of him, and they have it tacked up on the wall. Because look at him. I enjoyed his performance. I thought he did a good job of playing that character. I liked how he worked off of Andy when you're kind of getting into like their shared backstory. I liked his performance during like him and Misaki's little date where they like go out and have a nice day together. He turns in like just a nice solid performance. I've probably heard better from Chris Patton in more meaty roles, but he's very nice here. And at the very least, he manages to sell the turn of like, oh yeah, I have a crush on my older brother's would-be boyfriend, who's an adult woman who I met when I was like, 8? Something like that? Yeah, that's not weird. Now that this is all extremely normal. Christine, I think, also, I really liked her as Shuko. I agree, I think the show does a good job of handling Shuko's character in both making her still feel sympathetic, but not letting her off the hook for what she's done and how that's affected Misaki. And I think Christine brings a lot of that to it. I think she's definitely one of the stronger performances in this dub. I think she handles the character's angst and her trauma and just sort of what she's going through and how conflicted she feels about her own behavior and kind of, Misaki's here, I should make it up to her, but I've been just away for 6 years. I can't, am I just gonna appear and say hi? That's not gonna go well. How do I dig myself out of this hole? I'm in a hole of my own devising. What do I do now? And I really just enjoyed her performance. It did a good job of feeling very, maybe not natural given what the kind of show this is, but at least very authentic. I thought it was very well done. But now we're going to talk about the star of this section. Andy, playing the human personification of I need an adult, I am an adult. I'm not sure Ichan is a good person, but I do enjoy his general mad scientist tendencies and overall wiggliness, and that ridiculous, synthesizer squiggle that shows up whenever he comes along. This reminded me of many, many years ago. Arcada of Glass Reflections would sometimes do little videos where you basically just do it'd be a minute long maybe, and it usually just be a weird goof on some series that he enjoyed, and maybe didn't have a full video's worth of opinions on, but he kind of wanted to highlight as here's the thing I've been enjoying. And I recall he did one for Angelic Layer, which was just the bit where Ichan bursts out of what is it? He's hanging upside down, and he surprises Misaki, and he wiggles around as he is wont, and the electronic noise in the background, and he just looped that for a minute and a half. It's yeah, that's Ichan, alright. Just, you're gonna call security on him eventually. He shouldn't be doing that. I do appreciate that literally the first thing he does in the show is upset some children and get arrested. That's good writing there. I like that. But Andy's really funny as Ichan. I think he absolutely steps up to what the character needs. I think he is very good at being unnerving a lot of the time, and absolutely just this weird cartoony layabout. But when things get a little more serious, he can do that drama. Him kind of feeling conflicted about how to bring up his feelings to Shuko always felt very authentic. It never felt like we're trying to be serious, but it just kind of comes off as a joke because look who's saying this. I thought he handled a lot of that really well. And I thought he also knew where to amp it up and make him, really silly. And he did a really good job of anytime, Ichan just gets extremely, rubber person-y, as it were. I thought he just did a good job of handling this character, who's maybe not super, super complicated, but at least it has more range than creepy mad scientist guy would imply. And I think he might be my favorite performance in the show as a consequence. He's very entertaining, and I think he takes this character who has enough going on that it could be done poorly and executes it really well. I really enjoyed what he did.
Yeah. Let me start with Chris Patton as Ojiro. Honestly, it was probably one of the most down-to-earth Chris Patton performances I've heard in a long time. Actually kind of refreshing, all things considered. I do think I think the whole thing about him kind of having a crush for Misaki because his brother had a crush on Shuko was a bit weird, but then this is also Clamp, so...
Look, you're gonna enjoy Clamp, you're gonna have to put up with a lot of They're not big on...
Look on the bright side. At least there isn't a teacher waiting for his student to become legal.
Which, speaking of, bringing up the subject of Ichiro, when he first appeared in episode 1, I got this vibe of, where have I seen this character before? And I got vibes of the weird, creepy high school teacher in Azumanga Daioh.
Oh, God.
You're not wrong.
So then, I happened to look up Andy McGavin in ANN, and who does he fucking play?
Are you serious?
I think that's him. It's the only.
My recollection is he's in Cromartie High School, and we talked about it in our episode, and I believe I listed that teacher as one of his previous roles, so that's absolutely him.
Okay. Yeah, because the only other male role I can think of is Chihiro's dad.
Yes, he is Mr. Kimura.
Which I'm just like,
the early 2000s, man.
Like, I remember going into the Angelic Layer group chat, and I'm like, what the fuck, guys?
Yeah, pretty much.
But in all seriousness, the two characters couldn't be more different. I actually I liked his antics. Just appearing out of nowhere, freaking out Misaki, and then when somebody else appears and Misaki's trying to thank him, he's just gone. Like a ghost. He didn't exist. He never existed. It was all in Misaki's head. That's my headcanon. Just a magical ghost man.
And then he starts showing up again.
I also really particularly like his interactions with Mark Lukowski for Ogata. The two of them just had a really great dynamic. He is by far one of my favorite performances of the show, just because his comedic timing is so good. And that brings me to Shuko and Christine Otten. I want to preface this with the fact that I think the performance is actually really solid. And I like Christine Otten playing Shuko. I just don't like the character of Shuko very much. I thought Misaki let her off a little too easy for essentially what she did in the pretext of the show. I mean, I understand why she left and just never came back. I get anxiety. Trust me, I know that feeling all too well. But it's just one of those things that it's your kid. She's right there. You know? Anyway, though, standout performance. I want to say in the... Was it the penultimate episode or like the very end of episode 24 when she pulls off the mask to reveal herself to Misaki?
It's the very end of 24.
Okay. Yeah, where she just pulls off the mask and she's just like, Misaki, it's me, it's your mother. Like, that was just...
awkward timing.
Yep. So overall, I really like these three performances. I just wish that there was a bit more to Shuko's reveal and, like, actual time to develop Misaki and Shuko's sort of moral dilemma over Shuko's absence.
I'll agree there, like, writing-wise, I do wish, like, maybe this was a little bit longer, or they started that plot point out a little earlier, just so that it resolves a little better. But I will give the show credit that literally Shuko doesn't ask for forgiveness, and basically just, like, goes out of her way to be like, yeah, no, I'm a shitty mom. I'm a bad mom. I did all these things to you. I'm an awful person. I kept running away from you instead of facing things. I think, and I really do think that Christine's performance is really good throughout the show, but especially in that penultimate episode where she's explaining herself to her daughter. And I think she says the thing that killed her about when she said, "It's okay, Mom, I'll just wait for you," is the way that she delivers. I realized that my heart broke in that moment because I was making you carry that burden. Like, she knew in that moment she fucked up her kid's life. And I think that part of the other reason she didn't go back was because of that guilt that she did. And I think that Christine nails the whole aspect of the drama to Shuko. And I think that she has these kind of moments that are a lot like Misaki's actors, where they have a lot of those same little, like, dorky little moments and quirks about them. And I think that she plays well off the other characters around her, and especially Andy McGavin as Ichan, who is this huge dork, and he's this over-the-top caricature of an adult. when he's in front of Misaki and out in a crowd. But you obviously see that deep down that he is a person who cares and that he's kind of going out of his way to protect Misaki, because not only does he care about Shuko, but I think he realizes that Angelic Layer is the only thing that can bring them together in the first place. Because remember, they come up with the idea of Angelic Layer not because they're like, oh, well, we can use this as a thing. It's that Shuko says it reminds her of a doll that she had given to Misaki. And that's where this all comes from. Without Misaki's existence and her and Shuko fucking up, they never end up making this game that brings people together. And the thing that I like about Andy and about Ichan is that he does play Ichan as over-the-top childish, but he's also still a kid at heart when he's at his most serious. Whatever he's watching, people somehow break the fucking game that he's created. He's not pissed off. He's not the what's-his-nuts from SAO going into his own death game and fucking up kids. He's like, oh cool, you broke my game? Tell me how. That's awesome. Good job. Take a cookie. The only thing that he does not have care for is that he doesn't like people who cheat. Cause like, I know and that he doesn't like people who treat the angels not as an extension of the player, and I really love the speech in the last episode where he talks about Angelic Layer, and angel can be anything to you. They can be a child, a mother, a lover, a brother, but they can also be the extension of yourself that you never had. So it's one of my actual little favorite moments is in episode 10, where the boy Misaki fights our hero Misaki, and he leaves, and he runs into Ichan, and Ichan says, next time that you fight, why don't you give your angels an actual name? And then he leaves. And then, oh boy, Chris Patton. You can tell that this is an early ADV part, because Chris Patton plays the pretty boy. That's how you know this was an old ADV show. Chris Patton is the pretty one that everybody wants to be with. And I love him as Ojiro, and Ojiro is probably my favorite character, because he's a little piece of shit. He is a piece of garbage, in that he's lying to the girl that he likes the whole time, but I think he obviously starts stepping into Misaki's life, not because he genuinely wants to help her, but because he wants to fuck with his brother.
Yeah.
And to me, I think my favorite part of his character is when they're out on the date, and he's talking about when his stepdad was trying to get him used to him, and his stepdad brought him home, roasted chestnuts. And he sees a sand, and Misaki goes, oh, do you like them? He's like, oh no, I hate them. And he's got this smile in his voice. He's like, absolutely not. I fucking hate this. And and I love the idea that he wants to be Shuko because he wants to get over his crush of her. And he's got the static electricity guard, and I love when Misaki figures it out and breaks off her own part of her angel to have a grounding wire. And he's like, wait, what the hell? And they get so into it. And by the end of it, after she beats him and he goes over just the very earnest way, you want to go on a date with me?
Yeah.
And he's such a dork, and I love Chris's performance in this. This is, like, I think one of my favorite Chris Patton performances of all time. And a bunch of people are probably like, oh, what do you mean Chris Patton? He's not somebody who does anime a lot. Like, no, back in, like, the early 2000s, he was, like, every fucking pretty boy in anime.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, honestly, it's only, like, very recently that Chris Patton hasn't been in a lot of things. Like, I think basically ever since he moved to LA, but before then, he was in, like, basically everything.
and he was, like, that's why, like, back when Haikyuu, like, first got picked up by Sentai, I was so disappointed. I was just, like, and then they announced they were dubbing it. My exact words were, like, Toru Okaiwa from Haikyuu was made for Christopher Patton. And then they did it, and all was good. But, like, if for anybody who's watching this and plays a lot of, like, recent video games, I want you to all imagine that Ojiro, like, this kind of snarky, catty, sexy guy, is fucking Linhart, the sleepy bitch from Three Houses.
It's amazing.
Anyway, I love Patton's performance as Ojiro, and I think it's great. I think it's probably my favorite overall performance in the dub. Just because I think he's the one person that you never had to really adjust to being like, okay, this is his performance. Alright, are we ready to move on to the final character?
Yep.
Yeah.
Alright, let's talk about our protagonist, Misaki Suzuhara and her angel Hikaru. Misaki is basically a cinnamon roll too good, too pure for this earth, whose mommy left for cigarettes, drugs and cigarettes, and, the crippling neurological disorder, which, by the way, Roots, you're talking about how, like, her leaving and abandoning her mom, like, for anxiety over the medical issue is, like, understandable, but still. Yeah, in the manga, she doesn't have the disability. She just has crippling anxiety, and that's why she abandons her.
Boy.
Oh, wow.
So the anime actually, like, vastly improved things. The other thing that's really weird is that in the manga, Kotaro and Misaki get together, but Tomoyo and Ojiro get together, and for me, that doesn't work. Like, there's
that makes absolutely no sense.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is this pair this fair's bullshit?
Yeah, pretty much. So, Angelic Layer, whenever anyone ever says that no manga is better than the anime, just point to Angelic Layer because it is. I love Clamp to Pieces, but this is the chance when the manga is actually worse than the anime. But things that are not worse than the anime is Misaki, our sweet, small girl who is so short that I think she gets mistaken for, like, a third grader at one point.
Yeah.
And she just, like, I'm just going home. She ends up seeing Athena, her mom's angel, and wants to start playing the game because she sees the thing, and she eventually makes an angel to be like her. Also be the final battle between them on the fucking roses is some Utena level bullshit.
Yeah.
And I'm here for it. Also that shot when she wins and Hikaru's walking through the flames.
Right.
Hell yeah.
For a show about fighting Barbie dolls, the show is extremely metal.
Like, yeah, the fight on the pirate ship. There's literally a part where Shirahime, you find out, has a hyper mode, and she proceeds to pick up a virtual tree and smash it to pieces to get another angel off of it. It's fucking fantastic. Playing Misaki is Jessica Boone. Jessica Boone you'll know as Arumi Asahina in Magical Girl Shopping Arcade Abarabashi. She was Shile in Akame ga Kill, but the other really big thing that I think a lot of people know her as is she was Rue/Princess Kouhei in Princess Tutu.
Because real men watch Princess Tutu.
Princess Tutu.
I have not seen Princess Tutu yet, so I'm not a real man.
Oh, we are gonna... Jet, we need to fix that because Princess Tutu is a better Dark Magical Girl show than Madoka. There, I said it.
Yeah, that's what everyone keeps telling me. Anyway, Jessica Boone. Well, obviously I have heard her before. I mean, I did watch that Akame ga Kill about Tsunami. But she's also not a voice that I like immediately recognize, so I didn't know quite what to expect here. It's kind of similar to Sasa Pasega's performance, in that it's like this very, in that it's kind of like very weird exaggeration of like and what they thought a child character should sound like back then. That's it. Well, obviously a little older, but still kind of very much like this is a grown woman trying to sound like a little girl. So it's kind of like off-putting at points. And I think even more than like Sasa's performance at times, it kind of comes off as a little wooden in the beginning. So I had a kind of hard time adjusting to it. But I think that as the show kind of goes on and we like spend more time with Misaki and she starts playing the game more, Jessica's performance kind of improves a little bit. She did a pretty good job of bouncing off of some of the other actors in this show, whether it's like Andy McAfee as Ichan or Kevin Korn as Kotaro. I thought she did a pretty good job of bouncing off of those characters for the most part. I will say the part where the performance probably maybe like faltered the most for me was probably during all the stuff with Shuko. And that was definitely important to show that kind of called for her the performance having like a lot of nuance. And I didn't think she quite had that. I didn't quite buy into like a lot of the awkwardness she was feeling when she kind of discovers the reason as to why her mom effectively abandoned her and all like the awkward tension that would come to that. I thought she sounded like maybe a little too flat there, and it was kind of off-putting. It didn't quite take me out of the dub or anything, but I didn't think it quite worked as well as it needed to. But I think just when it kind of comes to making Misaki sound like a dorky 12-year-old, she's pretty good in that area and kind of making her sound very clumsy and cute. I thought she did a pretty good job in those instances, and definitely in regard to Misaki kind of, wanting to prove that even though she's short, she can still do a lot of stuff. I thought she did a pretty good job of kind of having the right amount of like awkward confidence in those moments, so I thought she did that really well. So, all in all, I'm kind of like extremely mixed on this performance. There's definitely some parts of it that worked pretty well for me, but I think like when it came to like the really dramatic stuff, it kind of fell a little flat. I think that's it.
All right. Listening to Jessica's performance through this, I think the thing that kept coming back is it was like, as we mentioned, like you can tell again, this is a much older woman playing a teenager and kind of using a voice for it. And the main thing I kept getting was like, I'm not sure this is a technically good performance, but she nails the sweet cinnamon roll aspect so hard that I'm not sure I care. Just any time Misaki is doing anything, it's just like, you sweet child. You go kick her ass. It's like imagine the most sincere version of that "you're doing great, sweetie" meme, and it's just like, you beat up that other small robot. You get carried on those angel wings, yeah. She's so adorable playing this character that I kind of the sort of the weird mismatch didn't quite bother me, and to be honest, the show is enough kind of weird early 2000s qualities to it anyways that if it didn't quite fit, it at least felt of a tone, like it was not distracting in a way that clashed with how the rest of the show might be distracting, or the rest of the dub. And I did think that during some of the dramatic moments, I thought she was able to hit those. The one that springs to mind is in the penultimate episode when she's like running away and finally admitting to herself, like, no, I was not okay with any of this. I've basically been lying to myself. And at the very least, I thought, like, this actually sounds very authentic to, like, some poor kid who's had to take on a bunch of adult emotional responsibility that she should not have had to, and is finally reckoning with it personally. And it's like, I thought that moment, at least, was well done by Jessica. And she's so just fun and bubbly, and it's just like, oh, you're adorable. I don't know. I want to buy you another angelic doll for some reason, even though you're clearly just going to keep using Hikaru because you're just such a sweetheart. Look at you, you're adorable. It was very cute, is what I'm trying to get at. Yeah, it was very sweet, and I enjoyed that part a lot. And I am done now. I promised I'll stop rambling.
Okay. Let's see here. I have to agree with you guys. Jessica Boone played Misaki with sort of a cloying sweetness. Usually that kind of irks me in a performance, but here it actually, in a thematic sense, kind of fit. Because after all, Misaki Suzuhara is a cinnamon roll too sweet and pure for this world. I adored this performance, even though it felt like a little bit of a mismatch. I actually heard, coming back around to Azumanga Daioh, and holy shit, I want to do an Azumanga Daioh episode one of these days.
Just go talk to Noah.
I probably should. I felt a lot of Chio-chan in this performance, which is also Jessica Boone, so it fit. Let's see here. Some notable... In particular, I am a big fan of sort of the moments in her fight episodes when she figures out her opponent's weak point and exploits it. I really like Misaki as a character because she just figures things out and is able to implement strategy so quickly in Angelic Layer. It's like learning techniques, martial arts completely by watching them. Where she wins because she happened to watch Tomoyo beating the crap out of Kotaro and implements those techniques into her fight. Where she learns the armbar. And it's just like the absolute most badass thing. It was great. But Misaki interacts so well with the other characters that she has to interact with over the course of the show. Yeah, I just absolutely love this performance.
Yeah, no, it's been so long since I've heard this dub, because I've watched it all the way through before when I was much younger. But for as much flaws as Misaki can have, because there are times where Jessica's performance is very flat, her line reads are a little off. I know, like, her crying sounds a little fake, but for all of that, I think that she gets the core of the character down so well that you, like, can't be mad at it. Like, clearly this is, if the show got redubbed, obviously the performance I think would be a lot better. I don't think that Jessica would come back to play her, because she hasn't been in anything, I think, since Akame got killed. But I really, and it's not as good as, say, like, it's hard to bring it up, but it's like older dubs, like, say, Johnny Bosch as, not Lavi, but what's the fucking dude's name in Last Exile? I just watched the show this year. Klaus! Like, him as Klaus, or even, like, just stuff from that era that's a little stronger, or, like, Justin Cook as Yusuke. But, like, it's not A tier, but it's not, like, god-awful garbage, turn it off, bad. It's distinct, but it's charming and hokey and warm and cuddly and approachable. And I really like that, and I do think the part where she talks about having the lump in her throat was pretty well executed. I think her, like, you gotta have fun stuff is really good. But man, the scene that kills me in the show, and I think that's, like, one of the really big hallmarks of why I really like this anime, especially in the second half, is when, I think it's in episode 14, is when they start the flashback of why Shoko left in the first place. And you see her get into the taxi, and Misaki's waving, and then her face just breaks into tears. Because she knows, like, deep down in her heart, her mom isn't coming back. And when she finally has the revelation of, she kept saying that she was okay, but deep down she really wasn't, because she wanted her mom and she's mad at her for leaving, but she didn't want to be selfish. I think that she gets the core of that across, even if it is flawed and a little uneasy. I don't think it's the best performance in the show, but it's also not the worst. It's pretty middle of the road. And the reason that I think a lot of people would see that as a problem is that for the most part of the show, Misaki obviously does carry the show. This is a show about her struggles and her kind of fish out of water in a fighting tournament. And that's the thing that I like about Angelic Layer's fighting tournament, is that it's not as much a fighting tournament as, in the sense that we're doing this to determine who's the strongest out of us, blah, blah, blah. It's, we're doing this to connect to people who are disconnected and disjointed. Fighting is the way that they're going to talk it out, and that's why Ichan says that in the last episode when they're kind of taking pot shots. It's, instead of using fighting as a way to just be like, oh, well, we're gonna determine power levels, and this is just a setup for something else later on for the end game. It's that they used fighting as a way to create a dialogue through characters and people who probably in their normal lives wouldn't interact and have the time of day for each other. And that's the thing that I like about the core of the show, is that, like, it's not that Angelic Layer is only for serious gamer boys or serious gamers who take this hardcore. It's, Angelic Layer can be picked up from anybody from a child to somebody who is disabled and enjoyed intimately, in a way. And I think that Jessica's performance does convey that, if not in a flawed manner. And now let's move on to final thoughts. Wow, this is a lot longer than I thought.
So, yeah, I watched this show for the first time for this episode, so I wasn't, like, totally sure what to expect for this, but I had a pretty decent time with it. I mean, I've seen a pretty decent amount of clamp stuff, and this is definitely the least weird clamp thing I've seen. And, like, aside from me, like, the last few episodes where, like, it gets, like, where the romantic entanglements get, like, maybe a little complicated, this is, like, honestly a pretty low-key kids show, so, and I think it's something you could probably show the whole family and they'd all get something out of it. The dub has definitely showed its age, and it definitely has its problems. But I think there is kind of like a weird charm to it, even if it is kind of a hokey charm. I think the actors here all give a relatively decent enough job. Like, I don't say, like, this stuff is definitely, like, not unlistenable. I have definitely heard, like, much worse from this time period. So if you want to put on this sub, it'll probably do you okay, if you can get past some of the hokiness. But yeah, this was definitely a pretty enjoyable little show. I'm glad I got to check it out.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun watching this too. This is very much the kind of show that feels dated in a fun way. This is listening to this dub feels the same way I get from watching like old monster movies or that kind of thing. It's like it's very of its time, and that's kind of part of the joy of it. And I think it helps that like this is a really like strong, well put together show. It's got like the writing, it's a lot of fun, and the fight scenes are really well done. I do not. It's weird having this kind of, kids show structure to it, and then half the fight scenes look like something from like a John Wick movie. They're really brutal. It's like, geez Louise, like in retrospect it's like, Bones did animate this, didn't they? Yeah, yep. Other studios would not have gone this far ahead to put this much fight choreography into the... Were there toys for this? I looked up and it looked like there were some, but not as much as I...
There's probably figures, but not as much as
I know, it's sort of like something that feels like it should have been so merch-driven. It's like, there's a lot of effort being put into some of these fight scenes. Man. Yeah, it was like, this is a fun show. I think this is like a really, like, just fun, very 2000s-y dub. I had a lot of fun revisiting it. Like, it's a good time. I recommend it.
Okay. My experience with this show, as I had mentioned, is I had seen maybe about a disc's worth of the show in, like, 2004, 2005-ish. With the group of other high school-age kids, while also sharing the space with a bunch of, with whatever kids were serving detention that week. Like, my anime club was an experience, let me tell you. I got stories, and if we ever do episodes based on some of the shows we watched, I will definitely relay some of them. Coming back to this, it was kind of interesting. The show is very well put together, very well constructed. Fight scenes are very well choreographed, character drama very well written. The dub is an interesting time capsule as well. I definitely, even based on my assessment of the first couple of episodes, which I really felt kind of weird about coming back to, I don't think the dub of the show aged like milk, like I initially thought. Wasn't exactly fine vintage either. I would say it aged like vinegar, whereas it's something you're not going to use it the way you originally. If you had brewed this like wine, you're not going to drink it like wine. You're going to use it for something else. And I think in that sense, watching this dub as sort of a time capsule into that time period of early 2000s, the anime companies are trying to figure this out and take it seriously kind of deal. It's really interesting. It's also something kids can very easily access, digest, understand. So you would definitely be able to watch this with your whole family. So in terms of the show itself, I highly recommend it. In terms of the dub, definitely worth it checking out at the very least.
I am so sorry that this episode ended up being as long as it did. There's a lot to go over. As a dub, I think that the dub is solid. It's not the best thing in the world. Definitely, it's not bad enough to turn off, but I definitely enjoy it. But I have a huge, big old set of nostalgia goggles strapped tightly to my face, and I'll admit that. Obviously, this is a show that I don't think you'd lose any value by watching one language track over the other, but I can definitely see a lot of people who are on the fence about watching it, maybe listening to a dub, and if you're used to a lot of the stuff that gets pumped out today, I don't think it's going to be up to your level. This is clearly not like Cowboy Bebop level good, which is the only dub that people think that older dubs are good, but it's also not like Cardcaptor Sakura bad. It's nothing like awful or god end or world ending, but if you find yourself on the fence and you think that based on the trailer that Sentai has up on their YouTube, that the dub sounds a little too hokey or a little too, like, rough, you'd be perfectly fine watching the sub. And it is a show that I think I wish a lot more people would have checked out, because it is a rarity in that it is basically a weird hybrid of shoujo romance, of like shoujo drama put with shonen action. It's something I like, because when you have a lot of like fighting tournament anime now, think your like Megaloboxes, your God of High Schools, a majority of the main cast is male, and if there's any female fighters, there may be one off or a joke the entire time. I mean, infamously, look at one of the biggest fighting tournament in an anime of all time, the tournament, not the Tournament of Power, but the tournament that happens before the Boo arc.
Oh, the Cell Games.
Is it the Cell Games?
I know, the World Martial Arts Tournament.
Yeah, the World Martial Arts Tournament, where it takes Videl and just beats the shit out of her character for no reason.
Oh, yeah, okay, Videl, yeah.
Even as a kid, that fight was, like, really hard to watch.
Yeah, and then Videl just stops doing things in Dragon Ball and becomes a mom, and it's okay. Because fuck you, Toriyama. But, like, the thing that I like about this is that there are a lot of archetypes and stuff in this show, but the show's approachable, and if you're just really tired of just dudes only having fun, like, give this show a watch. It's really sweet and really charming, and I think the arcs in it are pretty well thought out, and by the end of it, it'll make you, like, cheer and gush like the crowd when they're all cheering for her to get up, so. That being said, if you'd like to check out this dub, you can watch it all on High Dive, both subbed and dubbed, and there is a Blu-ray available from Sentai Filmworks as they rescued the license after ADV went under. It is currently not slated to have its rights expire as of the time of this recording, but if you're on the fence and you want to check it out, it's always good to grab a hard copy in case you know, because digital rights don't last forever. If you'd like to support us, we are the Dub Talk Podcast. You can follow us at YouTube, Twitter, Tumblr, Zed, Instagram, etc. If you'd like to donate to us as a one-time thing, we do have a Ko-fi link below, but if you'd like to support us on the regular, we do have a Patreon, and like I said at the beginning of this episode, this was a Patreon raffle winner by our lovely Patreon, J2 A.K.A. Jared. But we like to give a shout out to our other Patreons at our $5 tier: Crimson Echidna, Michelle Travis, Miracula Corazon, Nico Robin with Yowie Hands, and Victor Mayborada. And we have our $10 Patreons: Anthony Simpson, B. Morris, Carly Lestical, Jacob Wilson, J2 A.K.A. Jared, Julia W., and Marissa Lenti. Without you, our podcast could not be as awesome as it is.
Thank you very
guys,
much.
Okay.
Quickly plug yourselves.
I'm Jet. You can find me on Twitter at DivineNega, where I will usually be talking about anime news or cartoons or like whatever's going on in the world, I guess. You can also find me on my blog, Animation Infinity, where I will sometimes write things. And you can also hear me on another podcast, Surreal Resolutions Podcast O&A, where I'll usually be talking about anime news alongside fellow Dub Talk host Andrew.
I'm Amon. You can find me on Twitter at AmonDuelUS. Duel has 2 U's in it. I talk about movies and comic books and music, and I also have a dusty old song if anyone's interested.
Yes.
Go for it.
Alright, this was a hard one. I usually like to try something that's thematically related, but shockingly, I don't know a lot of songs about fighting robots. I know a lot of songs about being in love with robots, but that's more of a Chobits thing, so save that for that episode.
We already did that.
Well, I guess I'm out of luck, aren't I? If you're listening to the Chobits episode, just pretend I recommended yours truly, 1929 by Electric Light Orchestra there. But for this episode, I'm gonna pick something vaguely tangential related. Angelic Layer, it's from the early 2000s. What else is from the early 2000s? The great Amy Mann song Save Me, which is very pretty and also a real bummer, which is a little like parts of this show. Also, it was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Original Song and lost to Tarzan. Because the world is cruel and unfair.
Hey now!
Look.
Hey now! Phil Collins didn't have to go as hard as he did for the Tarzan soundtrack.
Look, I like Phil Collins. I don't like him as much as I like Amy Mann. I'm sorry.
Fair.
But yeah, go listen to it. It's a good song.
Alright, so you can find me on the twitter.com at Roots of Justice, mainly retweet cute animal pics, talk general fandom stuff. You should come hang out, have a good time. Still working on review stuff. I'll figure out where to post it, and I will let you know.
Cool, I'm Megan. You can follow me at QueenEra2. I shitpost on the regular, post pictures of my cat. And boy, howdy do I love my boyfriend. Anyway, this has been long enough. Good night, everybody. Be nice. Otaku on, and enter the angels.
Otaku on that daba.
Rock on Boston, rock on Chicago.
Robot rock.
Are those Bratz dolls? I didn't even know they were allowed in here. God damn it! I wasn't done! Fuck you, Steph! Jackson, you're keeping this in as a blooper at the end of the episode. You can't hear it, but like the rest of the podcast is on Discord behind me. That's it. That's the disclaimer. I'm done. Bye.